Hey guys, tonight we step into a time of fire and earth, of glowing metal and smoky skies to Iron Age. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal and damp soil, and somewhere in the near distance, a hammer clangs rhythmically against something solid. You walk slowly toward the sound, your bare feet pressing into the muddy path, the first hints of dawn breaking through the mist. Ahead, a forge glows like an ember. Men and women moving around it like moths, their hands calloused, their faces smudged with soot. Everything feels unfamiliar, primitive, maybe, but also strangely alive. You're not just watching history, you're inside it now. But fair warning, you probably won't survive this era unless you know how to swing a blade, build a fire from scratch, or make friends with a horse that bites. It's tough, smoky, and sometimes a bit too stabby for comfort. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're re-listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing your check-ins from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink slowly, eyes adjusting to this ancient world. The Iron Age isn't one moment, it's a long, slow burn across continents, from about 1200 BCE in the Near East to even later in parts of Europe and Africa. And right now, you're in the thick of it. All around you is a settlement in motion. Roofs are thatched, walls made of wattle and dog mud, straw and sticks woven like giant baskets. Chickens cluck nearby, unconcerned that their ancestors are about to be domesticated for the next several thousand years. Children dart between huts, carrying bundles of dried grass, or simply playing, their laughter mixing with the hissing spit of the blacksmith's fire. Iron has entered human history, not with a bang, but a hissa. Slow, smoky, clanging process. You crouch beside the blacksmith, who's rhythmically hammering a red-hot ingot on a stone. The iron glows like lava, its surface flaking and bubbling like old soup. It's mesmerizing, and you find yourself lulled by the repetition. Heat, strike, quench. Heat, strike, quench. You ask yourself, why iron? After all, bronze was flashier, easier to cast, and had been around for centuries. But iron is stubborn. It's everywhere under your feet, hiding in or rusty and raw. It doesn't want to be useful. You have to make it useful. That's the secret end. The danger. Historians still argue whether iron-making tech spread from Anatolia outward, or whether different groups figured it out independently. Either way, the moment humans began taming this metal, everything changed. Weapons became deadlier, plows turned more soil. Kingdoms rose and sometimes fell with a clank. In the distance, you hear a hunting horn. A small group returns from the woods with wild boar, half of it already butchered. The iron-tipped spear used to fell. It still drips blood. One of the younger hunters has a scratch across his cheek, probably from a tusk. He laughs it off. A grandmother smears crushed herbs on it, with a muttered charm. Back at the forge, you notice something odd. The tools aren't iron at all. Some are still bronze. A few are stone. Even a deer antler is used to scrape bark. It's not an instant switch. This Iron Age, it's more like a patchwork quilt of old and new. You wonder how many ancient grandpas scoffed at these newfangled iron sticks. The kids are carrying won't last, they probably muttered. Give me a real axe. The blacksmith looks up and nods at you. Wordlessly, you watch him shape a blade knot, a sword, but a farming sickle. Most of the iron tools in this era aren't made for battle, but for digging, chopping, scraping, grinding. War may get all the headlines, but agriculture is what feeds your Iron Age feet. In a corner, a boy is fiddling with what looks like a toy chariot made of sticks and bones. You chuckle, but then remember you re-standing in an era that will give rise to the real deal. Wheel-spoked war machines and thunderous horses. For now, though, there's still a woman nearby carries a newborn swaddled in wool. She hums softly, rocking on her heels. The baby's future. Maybe warrior, maybe farmer, maybe priest, or maybe like thousands of others see, won't survive past age 5. The Iron Age doesn't make promises. As the morning brightens, smoke coils lazily upward. A rooster crows, predictably late. The village stirs, stretching and yawning into its day. You smell fresh bread baking flat. Rough, slightly burnt. You take a bite. It's gritty, like chewing warm sand. Tastes like history. You glance toward the horizon. There, barely visible through the mist, is a line of standing stone. Ritual, astronomy, or just territorial bragging. No one agrees. And that's kind of the charm, isn't it? The Iron Age is full of mysteries you'll never solve. But you can walk among them, smell them, feel the weight of a new metal in your hand, and wonder what it all means. Just don't touch the glowing part of the iron bar. Trust me, that lesson's been learned the hard way for thousands of years. The air grows warmer as the sun crests above the tree. You're still standing near the forge, mesmerized by the glow of heated metal. It hums with potential. Iron has already begun to define this world and, in more ways than one, you reach down to pick up a small ingot, still warm from its recent birth in the blue. It's dense, heavy, and unassuming, but in it lies a quiet revolution. Bronze was beautiful, easy to shape, smooth to polish, but iron is the strong, silent type. It takes longer to make, longer to break, and longer to forget. You probably didn't expect a metal to change history, but that's exactly what iron did. Its widespread use marked a turning point across civilizations. From the Hittites and Assyrians of the Near East to the tribes of Europe and beyond, it didn't just shift the balance of power. It reshaped what power meant. The old elithos, with access to bronze, started losing their monopoly. Iron ore was more common. Suddenly, everyone had a shot at a better blade, a sturdier plow, or a nastier spear. Social order rewritten, class systems stirred, feudal vibes starting to foment. You wander through the village again, and it's becoming clear iron didn't just build swords. It built ambition. A young man passes by, carrying 2 axes, 1 bronze, 1 iron. You watch him weigh each in his hand, as if trying to decide which legacy to carry forward. The bronze glints softly. The iron looks dull, but feels solid. You already know which one he'll choose in the end. Historians still argue whether iron tech spread by trade, conquest, or simple trial and error. Some say it emerged almost simultaneously in places like Anatolia, India, and sub-Saharan Africa. Others insist there were pioneers, like the Hittites, who jealously guarded the secret of iron smelting until someone either bribed or stabbed it out of them. Either way, once the knowledge got out, it was impossible to stuff it back in the crucible. Somewhere nearby, a metalworker fans the forge. With a goatskin bellows, the coals glow white-hot, the heat radiating in waves to make your eyes water. The worker is using a technique known as bloomery. It's a primitive, laborious process. You don't melt iron fully, but rather coax it from its ore, like extracting secrets from a stubborn elder. The resulting bloom is spongy and impure, so you hammer it again and again and again. Welcome to the gym routine of the Iron Age. A little boy watches this all wide-eyed. He tugs at your tunic and points to a clay mold in the shape of a sickle. You kneel down, and he explains very seriously that his father says iron can help cut time in half. You grin at the pun. He doesn't get it. He's serious. With better tools, fewer people are needed to farm, dig, build. That frees up others to make, well, better tools. And, of course, pointier weapons as you walk through the surrounding countryside. The signs of change are everywhere. Stone hoes lie abandoned beside sleek new iron blades. A wagon creaks by with iron-rimmed wheels. Even the sheep pens look sturdy, area nails, replacing wooden pegs. Iron is turning survival into strategy. But not all is sunshine and sword. There are challenges too. The fuel needed to reach iron working temperatures. Charcoal devours forests in places where trees are scarce. This creates tension between industry and environment. You pause beneath a half-dead oak, its branches scorched by careless ember piles. The Iron Age may be the dawn of tools, but it's also the dawn of consequences. Further down the path, you hear singing. A group of women is weaving wool, using iron spindle whirls teeny, weighted discs that make thread faster and finer. You watch the fibers twist and dance, the women chatting as their hands move expertly. One of them tells you, not unkindly, that men may fight wars, but women clothe the winners and mend the wounded. And they use iron, too. You smile and nod, then almost trip over a stray goat. It looks offended. You apologize. It doesn't forgive you. Back in the village, a feast is being prepared. Iron cauldrons bubble with some kind of thick stubali roots, maybe wild boar. A thin plume of steam carries spices unfamiliar to your modern nose. You sit beside an elder who tells you between bites that iron gave his people more than tools. It gave them time. With sturdier plows and better grain storage, they could plant more, harvest more, and most importantly, philosophy doesn't grow well in hunger. He chuckles and taps his temple. You can invent a story or plan a battle if your hands are blistered from digging. Another elder leans in to share a quirkier tale that some people once believed meteors were sacred iron gifts from the gods. And honestly, if you found glowing metal rocks falling from the sky, you'd probably think they were divine too. Some of the earliest known iron objects like beads from ancient Egypt, quite literally. Space, jewelry. As twilight returns, you sit quietly near the forge once more. The bellows are resting. The coals are dim. The iron tools hang neatly on a rack, each one a silent revolution. It's strange to think how something so small, so gray and rough, could change the shape of civilizations. But it did, and it will. Even now, beneath your fingertips, the metal still hums with heat, not just from the fire, but from the stories it has lived through. You yawn. The smokes made your eyes water. Or maybe that's just time catching up to you. Either way, the Iron Age has only just begun, and you're here for it. You wake to the low murmur of voices and a steady cluck of chickens outside your hut. The light is soft and gray, filtered through early morning mist. You stretch, bones creaking just slightly, and push aside a hide curtain to step into a world already hard at work. Welcome to your Iron Age village, clay underfoot, smoke in the air, and daily life shaped by fire-hardened tools. Around you, the settlement begins to hum with activity. It's not exactly a metropolis, but it's no scattered camp either. You count maybe 30 roundhouses, those iconic beehive-shaped dwellings with conical thatched roofs and smoke holes in the center. Their walls are thick, built from wattle and daub, basically mud mixed with straw and slapped onto woven wooden frames. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the wind out. Mostly, a child scampers past you barefoot, trailing a half-woven fish trap. He's shouting something about a new eel spotted in the stream, as if he's just discovered gold. And to be fair, in a world where dinner depends on your traps working, that is kind of a jackpot. You head toward the heart of the village, where smoke from cook fires mingles with the savory scent of stewing root vegetables. This is more than just a group of huts. It's a living organism, communal, interconnected, and growing. Contrary to the stereotype of primitive tribes scraping by in isolated patches, many Iron Age communities were surprisingly organized. Villages were often laid out in planned patterns, with designated zones for animals, storage pits, hearths, and of course, the all-important forge. You wander past one such area, now a narrow lane, lined with grain silos, giant baskets woven from reeds, plastered with clay, and half buried in the ground. They're stuffed with barley and spelt, kept dry and cool beneath layers of ash. An old man sits beside them, muttering to himself and occasionally poking the thatch lids, like he is checking for grain thieves or mischievous spirits. You nod politely and keep walking. Historians still argue whether these Iron Age communities were egalitarian or already showing signs of social hierarchy. Some dig show houses of similar size and wealth, suggesting a balanced society. Others hint at elites, with fancier dwellings near the center and bigger piles of tools or imported goods. Maybe it varied, or maybe Iron Age social dynamics were as messy as a toddler with a honeypot. In one dwelling, you step carefully through the low doorway and find a woman grinding grain on a flat stone. Her arms are muscular from years of repetition, her movements practiced and meditative. You kneel beside her, listening to the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone. Every household like this has its own grindstone hand. Every belly depends on it. Behind her, bundles of herbs hang from wooden beams, their scents filling the room with sharp mint, earthy sage, and something that might be A child sleeps near the hearth, wrapped in a wool blanket with geometric patterns, primitive but intentional. Art in the Iron Age isn't just for beauty, it's communication, tradition, even magic. And the roof, let's just say it's doing its best. You glance up through a haze of smoke, escaping from the central hole. It's kinda working. Mostly. You cough, then smile. History doesn't always smell like roses. Outside again, you pass a pen of pigs snorting mud slicked, unapologetically noisy. Livestock is key in this world. Pigs, goats, sheep, chickens, each one a walking bank account, food source, and trash disposal system rolled into one. And they're not shy. A particularly bold goat nudges your hip with its horns. You respond with a withering look. It does not care. Near the edge of the village, you find the potter's women sitting cross-legged beside spinning wheels, shaping clay into bowls, jugs, and storage jars. The ceramics are simple but elegant, often decorated with lines, spirals, or dots pressed in with sticks or fingertips. One of them offers you a cup of warm goat's milk. You drink it slowly, trying not to think too hard about the goat you just insulted. You ask about the kiln. She points to a low, dome-shaped structure nearby, blackened with soot. Inside, heat pulses like a heartbeat. It's all wood-fired, carefully managed to avoid cracking the pottery inside. The temperatures never reach industrial heights, but the results last, generations sometimes outliving the people who made them. You trail behind a group heading out to the fields. They carry iron-tipped tools, hoes, spades, sickles. The soil is dense, but no match for sharpened iron. And here's something to think about. While bronze blades could cut, they bent easily and were a pain to sharpen. Iron changed all that. Now, farming didn't just become easier, it became possible in places that had once seemed unworkable. Someone jokes about sword plows turning war into work. You smirk, imagining a warrior grudgingly harvesting turnips. As they start digging, you sit on a nearby stone and watch the landscape unfold. Rolling hills dotted with tree stumps, forests felled for fuel, fields crisscrossed with hand-built ditches to guide rainwater, livestock trails weaving through the landscape like natural highways. This isn't chaos, this is structure, planning, and the kind of resilience that takes generations to build. You spot a small shrine near a tree stump, nothing grand, just a cluster of stones, a few bones, and some feathers tied with twine. Offerings, maybe a place to thank the gods for rain, or to ask for better barley. You don't touch anything. It feels sacred in that fuzzy, goosebumpy kind of way. A group of kids runs by with slings and stones, aiming at a tree stump like it owes them money. One of them claims to have seen a badger with glowing eyes last night. Everyone gasps, then laughs, but you're not so sure. Iron Age nights can be weird. As the day winds down, the village draws together again. Smoke rises, fires flicker, meals are shared. Laughter ripples across the fields like wind through tall grass. This place, this ordinary, muddy, iron-hardened villages, the beating heart of the Iron Age. Not the kings, not the battles. This daily life, ordinary tools, and the quiet revolution of smelted stone. And as darkness falls, the stars blink overhead like distant sparks, tiny ancient forges lighting up the sky. The next morning, you're awakened by the unmistakable scent of burning dung and singed hair. Congratulations! You've made it to the forge. It's not glamorous. You're not standing in some vast, gleaming workshop lined with rows of polished hammers. You're crouched beside a smoky pit dug into the ground, surrounded by mismatched tools, cracked stone, and a very sweaty man yelling at his apprentice to stop fanning so hard. You melted sideways again, and yet this is the epicenter of innovation. The place where dirt becomes destiny. Today, you're relearning how to smelt like a pro-war. At least how not to lose your eyebrows in the process. Right away, you notice the sheer amount of effort this process takes. First, there's the ore itself, chunky. Reddish rocks hauled in from a distant hill and piled beside the forge. It's called hematite or limonite, depending on how crusty and awkward it looks. In some regions, bog iron is literal swamp sludge, because it regenerates over time, like some kind of ancient renewable resource. Smart, right? The fuel is charcoal, not the kind from a modern bag, but painstakingly crafted piles of slow-burned wood, made over several days by people who apparently enjoy standing very still near hot things. A charcoal pit smolders for ages, reducing wood to carbon-rich lumps that burn hot and slow, ideal for heating iron, or past 200 degrees Celsius. You toss a piece into the fire. It hisses, pops, and smells faintly of wet socks and campfire. Then there's the Blue Maria, new best friend. Picture a squat, chimney-shaped furnace, built from clay, stones, and unspoken hope. It's not pretty. It doesn't need to be. Function is the fashion here. The goal is to get the ore hot enough to separate the usable iron from the impurities or slag. A term that sounds slightly rude, but is just ancient trash glass. Historians still argue whether these were independently invented in multiple regions, or whether the idea traveled along trade routes, like a hot potato. Either way, the science is surprisingly elegant. You load alternating layers of ore and charcoal, ignite the whole mess, and then keep the airflow steady using either goatskin bellows or, if you're fancy, an early crank system. Cue the sweat. You take a turn at the bellows. Each push forces air through a clay pipe and into the base of the furnace. The flames respond, roaring like a beast fed too much coffee. The heat is immediate, intense. Your eyebrows twitch nervously. Hours pass. Someone offers you a flatbread that tastes like ashes and ambition. You nod, trying to look grateful. In the background, a drum beat starts up, part ceremony, part entertainment, part attempt to keep people awake during this endless process. Eventually, the moment comes. The bloomery is cracked open, and a glowing, sponge-like lump is dragged out with iron tongs and dumped onto a stone anvil. This is the bloomer porous chunk of semi-iron, peppered with slag. It's ugly, glorious. You want to name it. Now the real work begins. The smiths begin hammering it furiously, knocking out the slag, compressing the iron fibers, shaping the raw bloom into something usable. Sparks fly, bright as stars. Each blow rings out into the village like thunder in miniature. You flinch. The apprentice doesn't. He's clearly seen worse. It takes hours of this heat. Hammer, reheat, repeat until the iron becomes what's called wrought iron. Malleable, fibrous, and ready to be turned into tools, weapons, hinges, or jewelry if someone's feeling extra. Nearby, a boy carries a newly forged sickle to a farmer's hut. Another man accepts an iron fishhook with reverence, as though it's a sacred object. In a way, it is. This isn't just metal, it's power, made physical. You pause, suddenly struck by how little room for error there is. If the bloom is undercooked, you get crumbles. Overheated, you burn off the good stuff. This isn't mindless brute work, it's delicate, like baking. If baking could permanently injure you and ruin your entire village's harvest season, a gray-haired woman joins you by the fire and tells you something strange. Some smiths, she whispers, won't eat while working. They say food softens the hands. Others believe you should spit into the fire before forging a blade. or say a prayer to the iron spirits hidden in the stone. Some even claim iron sings. You laugh, but then listen, and in the clatter and hiss, you swear you do hear a faint, high-pitched whine, like the metal itself is humming in protest or delight. And then there's the forge god talk. In many Iron Age cultures, the forge is sacred. In ancient Greek myth, Hephaestus limped through his smoky halls. Among the Celts, goblin-like spirits guarded the secrets of metal. In parts of Africa, the smith is both respected and feared half-craftsman, half-magician. The fringe theory. Some scholars believe early smiths deliberately cultivated mystery rituals, chants, taboos to protect their trade. After all, if everyone could make a sword, what would make yours special? As the forge winds down, you take a closer look at the tools. Hammers, tongs, awls, each one made from earlier iron, now shaping the next. Iron, shaping iron. You pick up a chisel cool to the touch new one, run your fingers along the edge. It's rough, imperfect, but it'll cut wood, or bone, or both. A child scurries over to return a bent nail to the smith. He takes it, smiles faintly, and tosses it back into the forge. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten. Iron has a kind of memory. Melt it, hammer it, reshape it. Still remembers the fire. By the end of the day, your clothes are smoky, your hands are blistered, and your mind is spinning. The forge may be small, but it's the heart of the Iron Age. Every hoe in the field, every spear at the village gate, every knife slicing roast boar. Tonight they all started here, in heat, in hammering, in a kind of fire-born patience that modern life has mostly forgotten. As twilight falls, again, you stare into the dying embers and feel the weight of something ancient and important, heavy, hot, and full of history. The clang of metal fades into silence as night rolls across the hills. But just before you nod off beside the still warm forge, a distant call jolts you upright. A horn low, mournful, and urgent echoes from the forest edge. You stand, heart thumping, and follow the sound toward the outer field, where the village warriors are already assembling. Torches flare, shadows dance across round shields and iron-tipped spears. Tonight, you witness something central to Iron Age life. Organized, noisy, and often deeply personal. The Iron Age didn't invent war. Let's be honest. Humans have been arguing with sticks since sticks were invented. But iron made war sharper, faster, and disturbingly efficient. Suddenly, their wooden club or bronze sword didn't quite measure up anymore. You crouch near the warriors as they prepare. Most are young men, though a few older fighters stand among them, scars across arms, hands curled from old breaks. Their weapons gleam dully. Short iron swords, leaf-shaped spearheads, axes heavy enough to split a helmet. Some wear hardened leather armor. A few lucky ones have mail shirts cobbled together from twisted wire links. Most just tunics and bravery. The village elder paces before them, delivering a quiet speech. You catch phrases like protect the grain, drive them back, and don't forget your ankles this time. Garoon. There's laughter at that last bit. Nervous, but real. You look closer at the gear. The iron swords are small, often less than 2 feet long. They aren't meant for elegant fencing, they're hacking tools, made for close combat, where your enemy's breath is hot on your face. A few shields are decorated. Historians still argue whether Iron Age battles were lost. Tribal affairs or skirmishes fought between neighboring villages with long-standing grudges and bad boundaries. Evidence leans both ways. Some battlefields, like Tolens, in northern Germany, reveal hundreds of combatants and broken bones. Others suggest swift ambushes or ritualized duels. Either way, the violence is real and often surprisingly organized. The warriors begin their march, not toward a grand castle or walled city, but into thick forest. Their enemies might be a rival clan, raiders, or something else, entirely old disputes about cattle or territory or insult. You follow at a distance, feet quiet on moss and loam. You reach a clearing where the two sides face off, mirrored in size and posture. No screaming charge, no wild brawl, not yet. The two groups circle, test each other, taunt. A javelin is thrown. Then another. Then chaos. The fight is quick and brutal. Spears jab. Shields thud. Someone cries out. You flinch, instinctively ducking even though no one can see you. The iron sings high. Metallic clashes. The scrape of blades catching shields or bone. And just as quickly as it began, it ends. A retreat. A few triumphs. The warriors from your village regroup and slowly make their way home limping, cheering, counting their fingers. One has a cut on his cheek shaped suspiciously like a hoof print. Tripped over the goat again, he mutters. Everyone laughs. Again, you wonder how much of war in this time is about territory, and how much is theater ritualized violence to reaffirm who owns which hilltop, or whose cattle graze where. Archaeologists find odd things on Iron Age battle sites. Bodies laid carefully with offerings, weapons broken deliberately, even skulls mounted on poles. Were they warnings? Honors? No one agrees. Maybe it was a bit of both. Back at the village, a fire is lit in the center circle. The warriors return in triumph, or at least with stories. One of them reenacts the fight, using bread loaves and a very patient chicken. You can't stop laughing, neither can the chicken. But not everything is joy. One man didn't return. His brother stares into the fire, silent. A woman drapes a cloak over his shoulders and sits beside him. No words, just presence. Even in the Iron Age, grief has no courageous company. You look around and see the weapons being returned to their racks. Some are cleaned immediately. Others hung with fresh sprigs of herbs' protective charms. Perhaps one warrior spits on the blade before sheathing it. Another whispers something to his axe before placing it in the corner, whether ritual or habit. The iron listens. Tomorrow, someone will patch wounds, mend shields, forge new blades. And the day after that, maybe peace, maybe more war. But tonight, under a cold, starlit sky, the fire crackles and life continues. And here's the odd thing. Even amid the violence, there's community. There's rhythm. Not all Iron Age battles were endless blood. Some were territorial displays, others rituals, and some probably ended with the equivalent of a firm handshake and some traded goats. But what iron did, what it really did, was shift the balance of every conflict. Bronze could be broken, stone could be dodged. But iron sank deep and stayed there. The torchlight flickers as villagers drift off to sleep. The forest is quiet again, and you lie back in the grass, staring up at a sky unchanged since that battle. The stars look down silently. The fire dies slowly, and the iron, resting beside the forge, waits for its next call. The sky is still dark when you awaken somewhere between midnight and morning. When dreams begin to bleed into waking life, you're lying near the hearth again, your head cushioned on a bundle of wool. The fire long since burned to embers. Outside, there's a soft rustle in the trees. Not the unsettling kind, more like a whisper. You pull your cloak tighter and rise slowly, stepping into the chilly air of something calls you toward the edge of the village, past the pens, past the still-sleeping forge. A narrow trail leads uphill through a grove of ancient oaks. The moon hangs low and full, casting a silver glow over everything. There, in a clearing ring, with stones and animal skulls, you find them the keepers of the old ways. 3 figures stand barefoot on the duet grass, faces painted in spirals and streaks. One holds a curved staff carved with strange symbols. Another stirs something pungent in a ceramic bowl. The third, a woman with braided silver hair and soot-streaked arms, turns toward you and gestures gently. You've stepped into the spiritual heart of the Iron Age. You sit cross-legged in the circle as the ritual begins. Contrary to what Hollywood might suggest, Iron Age religion isn't all blood and thunder. It's quiet, elemental, rooted in cycles and symbols. The earth, the sun, the moon, the iron in the ground and in your hand, they're all connected. Not separate deities in the sky, but spirits immanent in the world around you. One of the figures hums a low, melodic tone that vibrates in your chest. Another throws powdered herbs into the fire. Mugwort sage, crushed resin. The smoke curls into tendrils, forming vague shapes in the moonlight. You swear, just for a second, you see a wolf's face flicker and vanish. Iron Age spirituality was deeply local. Each community had its own blend of gods, ancestors, and animistic beliefs. Some worshipped tree spirits or river mothers. Others invoked sky fathers or what united them wasn't doctrine, but ritual. The rhythm of offerings, the practice of remembrance. The woman speaks now in a language you have. She offers thanks to the soil, the fire, the iron. She names ancestors aloud, her voice trembling slightly. One of the names sounds familiar. You realize it's the fallen warrior from last night. This is his morning rite. She pours fermented drink, likely mead or something equally mysterious, onto the ground. The earth drinks. A crow calls from a nearby tree. You feel oddly welcome here, like you've stumbled into a space older than language. Historians still argue how formal Iron Age religion actually was. There are no surviving Iron Age holy books, no standardized priests, but evidence from graves, shrines, and sacred springs suggests a deep reverence for the unseen, a belief that the world is watching and listening. You walk with the three figures down to a stream lined with mossy stones. Each one drops a small object into the water. A carved bead, a strip of cloth, a sliver of iron. You're handed a fragment of bone etched with spiral markings. Without fully understanding why, you place it gently in the current. It's carried away with a soft splash, vanishing into moonlight and water. This isn't superstition. Not to them, and maybe not to you. Either not right now. Back in the village, dawn is breaking. People begin to stir, rubbing eyes, yawning. You wander past a low mound you hadn't noticed before. Someone explains, it's a burial site. One of the first here. They say, we leave food on the stones. Sometimes, just in case. You nod, feeling the weight of quiet traditions that stretch beyond memory. The line between the living and the dead in this world isn't sharp. It's more like a fading path, through mist visible at certain hours, certain places. Later in the day, a group gathers at the longhouse to tell stories. Not entertainment exact, Lamar. Like memory made verbal. Bards, if you want to be romantic about it. Gossip with rhythm. If you want to be honest. A boy stands and mimics a spirit possession. Voice warbling, limbs jerking. Everyone laughs. Then a woman sings a song older than the village. A hymn to the goddess of rivers. Her voice is low, rich, oddly comforting. You don't know the words, but you know what they mean. And then someone half daring, half joking brings out a charm made of bone and string. Keeps the forest spirits away, he claimed. You're not sure he's entirely kidding. There are fringe theories that Iron Age people use psychoactive plants in rituals and bane. Belladonna, flyaguric mushrooms. You glance at the strange drink they offer you. Politely decline. You're already hallucinating enough from sleep deprivation. Later that evening, you sit near the hearth again, watching flames curl upward like fingers. A child beside you draws shapes in the asans, animals, spirals. You ask him what they mean. He shrugs. They just come to me. You smile and say nothing. Sometimes that's how magic works. Iron in this world isn't just for tools. It's sacred, meteoric iron. In particular those rare sky stones is often reserved for ritual blades, burial offerings, or pendants worn by those who speak with the gods. They believe iron remembers the stars. Maybe they're right. The fire pops, sending a single spark into the night air. You watch it rise, dance briefly, and disappear. Tomorrow, there will be farming, forging, maybe another skirmish or a feast. But tonight, under this vast sky, you feel the breath of a time when every stone had a story, every river had a voice, and every flame whispered secrets to those who dared to listen. You wake to the sound of hooves not galloping, but slow and steady, muffled in the morning mist. You sit up quickly, brushing stray bits of thatch from your hair, and follow the sound down a worn dirt path that winds past the village edge. A caravan is arriving. Not what you'd expect. No long line of camels or golden chariots here. Just a few sturdy carts, pulled by oxen with hips like boulders, and people wrapped in cloaks of many patterns and colors. Their carts are loaded with bundles, leather sacks, pottery, baskets tied with twisted flax. You spot glints of glass, bundles of wool, and something that might actually be dried fish from a coastline you've never seen. These aren't conquerors or migrants. They're traders, and they read part of a system far more intricate than this quiet Iron Age village would lead you to believe. You greet one of the older man with a face like a map and he nods politely. He offers you something round and shiny. It's not coin. It's amber, golden and translucent, warm in your hand. He points north, then shrugs. Long walk. This single piece of tree, resin likely, from the Bolticast traveled hundreds of miles, by foot, boat, barter, and chance. You just became part of its journey. That est the thing most people don't realize about the Iron Age. It est not isolated. It's not a bunch of muddy villages clinging to survival. It's connected. Maybe not in the same way we are, but connected nonetheless. Ideas, goods, styles, they travel. Slowly, haphazardly, but they do travel. You watch as the traders begin setting up camp near the stream. Pots are unpacked. Blankets are unfurled. One of them sets out a tray of trinkets, tiny beads of glass, bone combs, a few copper rings. Children gather quickly, eyes wide, as if they're at the world's first outdoor market. One of the women opens a tightly wrapped bundle and shows you something bizarre. A bit of carved ivory, shaped like a lion, or maybe a dog wearing a hat. It's hard to say. You ask where it's from. She says a name you don't recognize, then traces a zigzag path through the air with her finger. Historians still argue how extensive Iron Age trade routes really were. We know there was movement. We find Mediterranean amphorae in British burial mounds, tin from Cornwall in Greece, and glass from Syria and Central Europe. Whether the same traders made these whole routes themselves, or whether items passed hand to hand across that's up for debate. Likely both. You watch as the villagers begin to mingle with the travelers. Goods change hands. Information does, too. News of a distant flood. A strange illness to the south. A new kind of plow that cuts deeper and faster. Not all of it is true, but none of it is useless. There's a quiet genius to it all. Iron tools, of course, are prime currency, but not everyone has them to trade. So there's also wool, salted meat, dried herbs, pigments, horn, honey. One boy brings a basket of eggs with such reverence, you'd think he was delivering royal jewels. You spot a local woman bartering for a bit of blue dye. She holds a cloth like it's magic, and in a way, it is. The color doesn't exist here naturally. Someone, somewhere, crushed minerals, soaked snails, or boiled plants to create this hue. It's traveled through hands, across languages, carried by feet over rough, sun-cracked trails. You sit beside the fire that evening with the travelers, and the stories begin. One man tells of a sea that glows with fire at night. Another swears he saw a mountain that sings when the wind hits it right. A woman describes a temple made of polished stone that reflects the sun like water. You listen, wrapped in your cloak, cheeks warm from smoke and drink, and realize something. The Iron Age isn't static. It breathes. It exchanges. It changes. Even the metal itself is part of this network. You've learned by now that not all iron is equal. Some is softer, some more brittle. Local iron, swamp iron, imported ore have their quirks. Some villages trade for better quality blooms. Some smuggle meteorite fragments, like sacred relics. Others simply learn to make do, folding and refolding inferior iron until it holds its shape through sheer stubbornness. A fringe theory floats around certain circles that traveling blacksmiths were once among the most powerful and feared individuals. They moved from village to village, not just fixing tools, but teaching, arming, and maybe even settling old feuds along the way. Power, after all, comes in many forms. As the fire crackles low, one of the traders shows you his own iron blade. Not a sword, but a long knife with strange markings near the hilt. He tells you it was passed to him by his grandmother, and before her, someone who crossed a frozen sea. He sharpens it slowly, lovingly, like he's speaking with it, and you start to understand iron isn't just a tool here. It's a passport, a memory, a promise. Before bed, you walk one last lap through the makeshift camp. The traders are snoring gently, cloaks pulled over heads. The villagers are sleeping too, closer than usual. Lulled by the strange comfort of visitors, a child sleeps curled around a carved wooden fox. A woman snores into her own braid. Someone murmurs in their dreams, and someone else replies, half asleep. It's not real. Go back to dreaming. You lie down beneath the stars, head full of maps you'll never draw and paths you'll never walk. But for a moment, you've touched the threads that bind this world together, strong and stretched across miles of earth and years of fire. The Iron Age may be old, but it's never still. By now, you're settling into the rhythm of things. Your muscles ache in all the right ways. Your cloak smells like wood smoke, and your hands have that faint, permanent dusting of iron-black grime. You've become part of this Iron Age world, not just a visitor, but a participant. This morning begins with the unmistakable sound of hammering, not chaotic clanging. It's more rhythmic-like, a heartbeat in metal. You'll follow the sound of the forge, tucked between two earthen walls, reinforced with stacked logs. There's a roof overhead made of woven branches and turf, but the sides are open to let out the heat and smoke. Inside, the blacksmith is already at work. His arms are thick with muscle, wrapped in soot and sweat. Sparks rise like tiny fireflies every time his hammer meets the glowing iron. And you just stand there, watching, hypnotized. Iron Age metalworking is a kind of wizardry. You watch the transformation in real-time stone and or into blade and brilliance. It starts, as it always does, with a bloom. No, not the flower kind. A bloom is the spongy, irregular chunk of iron that comes from the smelting process. It's not pure yet, still full of slag and impurities, but it holds potential, like a stubborn lump of clay. It just might become a sword. The forge bellows, with the help of a leather-skin pump, operated by a boy with scrawny arms and a determined expression. You're invited to try, and it's harder than it looks. Each press forces air into the charcoal fire, feeding the flames until they glow white. Iron melts at a higher temperature than bronze, which is one reason earlier cultures didn't leap to it immediately. You need serious heat, serious patience, and a willingness to get third-degree burns. Historians still argue about whether Iron Age smiths fully understood the chemical changes they were triggering: carbon migration, oxidation, slag separation. But whether they knew the why or just trusted the how, it worked. The results speak for themselves. You watch as the blacksmith pulls a heated bar of iron from the coals. It's soft, now malleable. He lays it on the anvil and begins hammering. Not randomly. Each strike is precise, shaping the metal, forcing out impurities, strengthening the grain. Fold, strike, cool, reheat, again and again. There's a poetry to it. You don't even realize you've been holding your breath. Eventually, what was once a formless bar becomes the suggestion of a blade. He cools it in a trough steam, hissing like a snake, and holds it up to the light. You see the faint curve, the taper, the beginnings of an edge. He hasn't made a sword, not yet. That would take days. But he's made a promise of one. And here is a fringe tidbit. Some blacksmiths were buried with their tools not just out of respect, but fear. In some cultures, it was believed they had power over life and death. After all, they made the weapons and the plows, creation and destruction in one blistered hand. A young girl wanders in carrying a broken sickle. She waits patiently until the smith waves her over. She places it on the bench, then stands back, wide-eyed. He inspects it, nods, and gets to work. No lectures, no fees, just a quiet understanding. Tools break, and someone must fix them. You ask the boy with the bellows how he learned the trade. He shrugs, watched, then helped. That's how most things are taught here. Not with scrolls or syllabi, but with long hours, burned fingers, and eventually, confidence. The forge isn't just a workplace, it's a hub. People drift in and out, dropping off arrowheads to be sharpened, chatting about rumors from the coast, trading dried apples for horseshoe nails. It smells of smoke and sweat and hot iron. You never want to leave. By midday, the smith lets you try your hand at the anvil. He gives you a simpler task, flattening a rough strip into something closer to usable. Your strikes are timid at first, then bolder. Then you nearly smash your thumb and reconsider your entire life. He laughs. Again, he says, "So you do." There's something grounding about it, literal and metaphorical. You're shaping earthborn metal with fire and will. You're making a thing that wasn't there before, even if it's just a lumpy nail. Lunch is a simple stew eaten near the fire, and you notice the tools scattered around: tongs, chisels, shears, each one handmade, each one essential. There's a special iron punch used for hole making in leather, another tool with a curved edge for scraping. They all have names, not official ones, just whispered ones: biter, sunfinder, crow. That evening, the forge quiets. Coals are banked, tools cleaned. The smith sits back, sipping from a cup that smells faintly of honey and herbs. He shows you a small ring iron plane, but well made. "First thing I ever forged," he says. "Kept it ever since. Reminds me how long it takes to learn." You take that in. The humility of it. The patience. As night falls, you linger nearby, watching the last curls of smoke drift upward like forgotten thoughts. A girl brings her father's axe for repair. A man asks if the new nails are ready. A child sneaks a look under the bench, half hoping to find something magical. And maybe he will. Iron isn't flashy like gold. It doesn't gleam like silver, but it changed everything, and it still glows red hot in the hands of those who dare to shape it. You lie down again on your woven mat, palms sore, arms aching, and feel a strange kind of peace. Today, you made something. Tomorrow, you'll make more. You wake with a start to the distant beat of drums. Not war. Drums don't panic. These are slower, more deliberate, ritualistic. You throw on your cloak and follow the sound toward the central clearing, where a crowd is beginning to gather, hushed and expectant. It's ceremony day. In the Iron Age community, life isn't just built around survival. It's woven with beliefs, rituals, for the seasons, for fertility, for the ancestors, and sometimes for reasons no one can quite explain anymore. Today's gathering feels sacred. You can smell it in the air, along with herbs, smoke, and something faintly musky like damp stone and old magic. A circle of standing stones anchors the clearing. Some tilt like sleepy giants, others are straight as guards. Lichen curls across their faces, and spirals and symbols have been carved deep into their meanings are long forgotten or fiercely debated. One stone has a narrow slit through the center. A child places a hand through it, and an old woman gently places hers on the other side. It's a quiet moment, but the crowd ripples with approval. The rite is complete. Whatever it was, you find a place on a mossy rock and settle in. The drumming continues, joined now by a low chant from a trio of elders. They wear cloaks stitched with bone and feathers, and their faces are painted with urs. Their voices rise and fall like waves, and though you understand none of the words, the meaning flows through you like a current. The ceremony begins with offerings, not gold or silver. Those are rare here, and frankly, overrated. Instead, people bring bread, mead, wooden carvings, dried flowers, tiny iron tools. One boy leaves a clay fox, clearly made by hand, its face charmingly lopsided. No one laughs. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. You lean toward a man beside you and ask what this is all for. End of harvest, he murmurs. Thanks to the earth, to the dead, to what comes next. That's the heart of it, really. Iron Age people live in cycles, crop cycles, moon cycles, life and death. They plant with hope, harvest with gratitude, and bury their dead with care, not because it's poetic, but because it's necessary. You can't survive here without meaning. One of the elders steps forward and raises a carved staff high into the air. It's wrapped in leather and tipped with a polished black stone. He presses it to the center stone, then begins a chant-off, melodic half-song. Historians still argue whether these rituals were led by formal druids, local shamans, or rotating village elders. The lines between religion, leadership, and storytelling are blurry in this age. Some say these figures had real power. Others say they were simply memory keepers, preserving tradition in a world that didn't write things down. You're handed a small branch of holly, sharp-leaved and glossy. You mimic the others and place it carefully in a woven basket already, brimming with herbs and feathers. No one explains what it's for. That's kind of the point. The ceremony shifts, then less formal now. Food is brought out, a goat roasted over hot stones, flatbread thick with barley, a drink that tastes like someone added honey to a thunderstorm. You chew slowly and listen to stories told around the fire. Tales of giants who live in hills, of warriors who turned into birds, of lovers who became rivers when torn apart. And here's a quirky tidbit. In some Iron Age communities, the line between myth and history was beautifully thin. A sword wasn't just forged, it might have been found in a dream. A hill wasn't just a hillet, might have covered a sleeping god. These beliefs weren't primitive, they were poetic frameworks for understanding a harsh, unpredictable world. As the sun sinks, the fire blazes higher. People dance first, slowly, then with wild joy. You find yourself pulled in, stepping over roots, tripping on your own feet, laughing harder than you have in days. And then, suddenly, everything stops. A woman walks forward, holding something wrapped in linen. She unwraps it slowly, revealing a delicate iron object, small sickle, old and worn. She holds it high, and the crowd falls completely silent. Someone has died. This is a funerary moment, but not a sad one. The woman places the sickle gently against the base of one of the stones, then sprinkles herbs over it. A whisper passes through the crowd. He was a good man. He brought the apples. That's all. No eulogies. Just memory and respect. You stand in the dark, the firelight flickering against your face, and feel the weight of it all. These people, this world, don't see death as an end. It's a return, a transformation, a merging back into the land that feeds them, that shelters them, that takes them home. The wind picks up slightly, rustling the grass and carrying the smoke in strange curls through the stones. You swear, for just a moment, the carved symbols shimmer. Then it's over. Slowly, gently, people begin to drift back toward their homes. Children fall asleep in arms. Elders lean on shoulders. Someone sings softly, not a song for performance, but a song for walking. You don't know the words, but you hum along anyway. Later, back on your mat, staring at the stars beyond the smoke hole in the roof, you feel grounded, not in the modern sense of being punished, but in the deeper sense connected, rooted. Rituals, you realize, aren't about proving anything. They're about remembering, not just people, but rhythms, seasons, promises, losses, hopes. In the Iron Age, you don't just live by the land, you belong to it. The morning light breaks softer today, filtered through low mist that curls lazily along the earth. Like it is in no rush to rise, you stir beneath your wool blanket, stretch, and listen, not for danger, not for drums this time, but for the gentle sounds of daily life, chatter, livestock, the scrape of a wooden door. Your muscles are still a little sore from hammering iron. Your hair smells faintly of smoke and elderberries, and there's dirt under your nails. All excellent signs that you've acclimated. Today, you're hurting, That's right, welcome to the pastoral side of Iron Age living. While the image of warriors and druids gets most of the attention, herding livestock is a day-to-day grind for many communities. And it's not all sheep and serenity. These animals are walking treasure troves. Wool, milk, meat, hides, bones. On particularly exciting days, unpredictable stampede, you start by helping an older boy, he's maybe 13, but moves with the quiet confidence of someone twice his age. He hands you a crooked stick, carved at one end with a spiral that probably means something, and grunts. Don't fall asleep. The sheep are already gathered near the edge of the settlement, nervously munching grass and giving you some. They know what's coming. The hills beyond are rolling, peppered with shrubs and occasional stone outcrops, perfect for grazing. As the animals begin to move, you walk behind, occasionally clapping or hissing through your teeth. Low-tech sheep psychology. Herding, you soon learn, is part instinct, part observation, and part pretending you're in control. The sheep will absolutely test your boundaries. One strays into a boggy patch, and you have to wade in, boot deep in muck, to nudge it back. It looks unimpressed. You mutter something sarcastic. The sheep sneezes. Alongside the sheep, there are also goats more independent, slightly more chaotic, and a few lanky cows with shaggy coats and expressions that suggest they know exactly how little authority you wield. You crest a hill and pause. From here, the landscape stretches wide forests, stone circles, fields divided by hedgerows or ancient banks. Somewhere to the east, there's the glimmer of water, maybe a lake or a marsh. The wind carries the scent of heather and distant fires. It's breathtaking in its ruggedness. You pass a marker stone, small, moss-covered, and shaped vaguely like a boar. The boy taps it as he walks by. You mimic him, unsure why. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's habit, maybe it's both. Herding also means waiting. Long hours perched on rocks, chewing dried berries, watching the animals graze. And that gives you time to think about the people you've met, the rituals, the smith's ring, the girl with the lopsided fox, the chant you still hum without meaning to. Historians still argue whether Iron Age pastoralists migrated seasonally in all cases, or whether some stayed semi-permanent, adjusting their range based on weather. Evidence points both ways. Some settlements seem fixed, while others show signs of movement. Temporary structures, well-worn herding paths, seasonal animal bones. Either way, it's clear that animals are wealth here. They're not just food, they're status. A chief's power might be measured in cattle. A marriage proposal could involve the gift of a prized ram. A festival might revolve around the first spring lambing. And here's a quirky tidbit. In certain areas, archaeologists have found cow burials, individual graves, complete with offerings. No one's entirely sure if these were sacred cows, beloved companions, or simply high-stakes livestock funerals. Either way, someone took the time to honor them. The sun climbs higher, and with it, the heat. You strip off your outer layer and tie it around your waist. Grateful for the breeze, the sheep have settled into their lunch rhythm, munching, occasionally staring blankly into the void like overworked accountants. You spot movement in the distance, a woman on a ridge, walking briskly. The boy sees her too and waves his staff. She holds something above her head. A pot. You both light up like it's the best news of the week. Lunch is here. She joins you on the hill and uncovers a small ceramic pot, still warm from the hearth. Inside is barley porridge with wild leeks and tiny cubes of dried meat. It's hearty, savory, and slightly burnt on one side. You eat it gratefully with a shard of Conversation is minimal, but meaningful. She asks if you've seen any foxes. You haven't. She nods, satisfied. Foxes mean trouble, clever thieves. Even the gods, she says, have trouble with them. After she leaves, the boy tells you about the time a fox got into their calf pen and caused such a mess that the elders thought it was a spirit. Nearly set the whole village on fire, he mutters. You nods. Foxes are chaos gremlins, noted. By late afternoon, the sky begins to shift. Clouds roll in, and the wind picks up. The sheep become restless. Rain is coming. You gather them in, guiding them slowly downhill toward a dry copse where they can shelter beneath a thick tangle of trees and earth banks. It's muddy. It's loud. You get butted in the thigh twice and step directly into something you very much hope is just mud. Back at the settlement, you and the boy guide the animals into their pens. Wooden rails, reinforced with thorny branches, keep them A few goats try one last escape, because of course they do. But you cut them off just in time. The boy grins. Finally, didn't lose any, he says. Victory. As dusk settles in, you sit with him by the pen, sharing dried fruit and watching the animals settle. One sheep comes up to you, sniffs your hand, and bleats. You offer it a berry. It chews loudly and wanders off. Friendship. That night, with sore legs and the scent of livestock baked into your skin, you lie awake a little longer than usual. The wind howls softly through the wooden beams, and rain begins to patter on the roof above. You've learned something vital today. Survival in the Iron Age isn't just about drama and war and firelit ceremonies. It's also long, quiet hours spent watching over something that can't protect itself. And maybe that is the core of it. Living in this age means protecting what feeds you, whether it's sheep, soil, or stories. The rain lingers into morning, a steady patter that plays a soft lullaby across the thatched rooftops. You wake slowly, wrapped in warmth, the earthy smell of damp wool and smoke clinging to everything. Outside, puddles glisten in the faint light. Inside, it's a chorus of sniffles, creaking joints, and a slurp of morning broth. Today, you're learning how Iron Age folks turn mud, muscle, and memories into monuments. That's right, while most days revolve around animals and iron and keeping your feet warm, some are reserved for something grander marking time, space, and belief with megaliths, barrows, and circles that still stand millennia later, whispering secrets to anyone who listens hard enough. You set out with a small group. Just after the rain breaks, the sky is still heavy with clouds. They're carrying tools, not spears or plows this time, but ropes, wooden sledges, and woven baskets full of stones. This is no raid. This is construction. Your feet squelch through the soaked grass as you follow them out of the settlement, up a gently rising slope that leads to a partially finished stone ring. It's not enormous, maybe 40 feet across, but it's precise. Even from here, the stones form a rough but intentional circle, some already standing, others half like teeth in a giant's jaw. You help unload the sledges and begin the process of preparing the next stone for standing. It's a bruiser slate gray, veined with rust-colored streaks, and probably heavier than a fully grown ox. A channel has already been dug, and the villagers work together to hoist it into position using ropes, leverage, sweat, and sheer stubbornness. Historians still argue whether such stone monuments were purely ceremonial. Early calendars, tribal markers, or sites of burial and pilgrimage. Some point to solar alignments, how certain stones frame the sunrise or sunset at solstice. Others highlight the burial pits beneath or nearby. Then there's the fringe idea that they were musical instruments of the earth. You glance around. Honestly, that one kind of tracks. The atmosphere is oddly reverent. Jokes are whispered, not One woman sings as she packs clay around the base of the stone. A child watches wide-eyed, then tosses in a pebble like it's part of the ritual. No one stops her. You sit beside an elder who is carving a spiral into a smaller stone with a shard of iron. The spiral curls inward, tighter and tighter, like a slow fall into sleep. Time moves like this, he says softly, not forward, around. He explains that each new ringstone is chosen with carrot's shape, its grain, even where it came from. This one, he says, was dragged from a river the valleys over. They believed it held something sacred, driver energy, memory, or simply the stubbornness to survive years underwater. You run your fingers along the stone's edge. It's cold, slightly slick. It hums faintly. Or maybe that's your imagination. By midday, the stone is upright, swaying only slightly before it finds its balance in the earth. Everyone lets out a breath. A few cheer. The child claps. Another woman lays down a handful of hazelnuts at its base, then steps back. It's beautiful. Primitive. Sure. Uneven. Definitely. But it means something. You help tidy up the area. Then walk the full circle slowly. The stones form no perfect symmetry, but there's intent. A gap to the east is wide, or perhaps an entrance. A smaller cluster near the center could be an altar, or a place to sit and dream. And here is a quirky detail. Researchers studying Iron Age circles have found magnetic anomalies around certain stones. Nothing drastic, just enough to make compasses twitch. Was this intentional coincidence? Or did these people have some deeper sense of earth and energy that we've forgotten? You'll glance down, your feet tingle. The return walk is slow, filled with conversation. One man carries a carved wooden post. Another hums the same song from earlier. There is laughter as someone recounts how a pig once wandered into the circle during a ceremony and refused to leave, snorting at every attempt to coax it away. That night, back in the settlement, there's a feast knot, extravagant but hearty. Stewed lentils with herbs, roasted roots, and a sticky dessert made from berries and crushed hazel. The circle's completion is cause for celebration, or maybe just a good excuse to eat too much. A storyteller bent with age, voice like gravel and honey, sits beside the fire and begins spinning a tale about the first circle ever built. A gift from the sky gods, who wanted a place to dance among mortals. But they were clumsy dancers, he says with a wink, and left the stones behind when they tripped. Everyone chuckles. You do. As the night deepens, you slip away and climb the slope alone, back to the circle. The moon has risen, pale and round, casting long silver shadows between the stones. You walk through them slowly, heart beating in time with the wind. You pause in the center, surrounded by silence. Stars blink overhead. The stones feel taller now, older. You lie down in the grass and stare upward. The spiral carved earlier gleams faintly nearby, catching moonlight like an echo. You wonder how many feet have stood here, how many voices sang, how many lives passed, each leaving a thread in this great woven cloth of earth and story. And you realize these aren't just monuments, they're reminders that you're part of something bigger. That memory can be made from stone, and that even in an age defined by ire, it's the unbreakable quiet moments, like this one, that endure the longest. The sun wakes you before the rooster does, slipping through the gaps in the wattle walls and painting thin golden stripes across your face. Your back aches a little from sleeping on packed earth again, but there's something satisfying about waking with the sounds of life all around you. Footsteps outside, hushed voices, a soft rustle of wind in the trees. Today, you've been asked to join a small group heading out for a task that is as important as smithing or herding, gathering salt, that plain white mineral we take for granted today. In the Iron Age, it's precious. It's how you keep meat from rotting, how you treat wounds, how you add just enough bite to make boiled grains slightly more bearable. Without it, life is both bland and dangerous. So off you go, down a winding track through woodland and marshy ground, following a pair of shaggy oxen pulling a simple cart. The others in the group chat idly about the last hunt, the strange dreams someone had, and whether goats can actually count. Consensus probably not. After about an hour, you reach a shallow estuary. The smell hits you, first briny, organic, alive. Reeds wave in the breeze, and the tide is pulled back just enough to reveal muddy flats, shimmering with moisture. This is a salt marsh, and your source of the good stuff. You help scoop up thick, damp mud from specific low spots, little basins where salt water has pooled and dried under the sun. This salty sludge is collected in wicker baskets and carried back to a rudimentary hearth nearby. There, It will be boiled slowly in clay, pans over a fire, until the water evaporates, leaving behind white, crusty crystals. Glorious salt. You ask someone why they do unjust. Walk away with a big chunk of it from a cave or something. The man laughs, because we don't have caves that give out salt. You want that? Go live in Hallstatt. Historians point to that region in modern Austria as one of the richest Iron Age salt centers. The so-called Hallstatt culture is practically built on salt mined deep from the mountains, traded across vast distances, and responsible for an entire era's worth of fancy grave goods. But out here, you have to get creative. As the salt pans bubble away, you gather driftwood and toss it on the fire. Someone offers you a sip of something strange, slightly fishy, oddly sweet. Turns out it's a type of fermented brine drink. You politely decline the second sip. A woman nearby is busy forming the harvested salt into small cakes. Not just for storage there. Also, currency. In a world without coins, trade depends on things like salt cakes, beads, and good old-fashioned bartering. One of these cakes might get you a few bundles of herbs, or a jar of bear fat, or, on a good day, a particularly shiny apple. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some parts of the Iron Age world, people buried salt, with the dead perhaps to preserve the body, or to ensure they had something valuable to trade in the afterlife. The practice blurs the lines between practicality and spirituality, as so many Iron Age customs do. The wind picks up as the tide starts creeping back in. You work quickly, packing the last of the salt into sacks and loading them onto the entire marsh glimmers under the late sun, like it's been dusted with stardust. You pause to take it in the reeds, the breeze, the scent of fire and brine. It's strangely beautiful. On the walk back, the conversation turns philosophical. Do you think salt ever runs out? Someone asks. A quiet debate follows. One man says, the sea is endless. Another thinks the gods could take it back if angered. You offer a theory about underground oceans, and the others look at you like you just suggested the sky might fall. In which, to be fair, is a common worry around here. Historians still argue how salt extraction was organized in smaller Iron Age communities. Was it communal, managed by specific families, or was it done seasonally when the need grew urgent? The evidence is patchy. Salt leaves traces on the land, but not always in the record books, mainly because, well, there weren't books. Back in the village, the salt is stored in sealed clay jars. A few cakes are set aside for trade, others for food preservation. You help sprinkle some over slices of smoked meat hanging in the rafters of a storage hut. The meat glistens faintly, like it's been given a second skin. Later, at supper, you notice a subtle shift in flavor. The stew is richer. The root vegetables taste deeper. That's the salt, doing its quiet magic. No fanfare, no sparkle, just the ancient art of making things last. After the meal, a young boy brings out a tiny pouch's first salt cake. He's wrapped it in bark and tied it with a piece of braided wool. He plans to give it to a girl who lives in the next settlement over. She traded me a really nice comb, he says, blushing. Someone teases him about marrying for seasoning. The rest of the group roars with laughter. As night falls, you find yourself thinking about all the things we pass over today. Materials. Custom stat were once rare, sacred, or painstaking to produce. Salt, in this world, is more than a flavor. It's survival. It's trade. It's a kind of promise. And now, with the sky darkening and the fire crackling low, you lie back against a pile of hay, heavy with the day's work and full from the simplest of meals. Your fingers still smell faintly of brine. Your muscles ache in that satisfying, earned way. The Iron Age teaches you this again and again. That value isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's quiet, granular, essential. Just like salt, you wait till the sound of hooves steady, rhythmic, and a little too close. For a half second, you think a rogue ox has wandered into the village again. But no, these hooves are lighter, more deliberate. When you peek outside your hut, you spot them. Visitors, strangers, technically. but they're greeted with knowing nods and warm smiles. This isn't a raid, thank the gods. It's trade. These Iron Age travelers wear strange patterned cloaks, brighter than anything you've seen around here. Their horses are short and stocky, but clearly well cared for, their saddlebags bulging with wares. One carries what looks suspiciously like glass, beads, actual glass, glinting like colored ice. And so begins your day immersed in the rhythms of Iron Age commerce. Out in the village clearing, a kind of market forms, informal but intentional. Tarps get laid over flat stones. Baskets are items are placed out with a practiced flourish. Hunks of amber, cured hides, woven fabric, carved bone pins, salt cakes, bits of tin, and what might be olive oil in a sealed ceramic jar. It's mesmerizing. You help where you can, mostly hauling goods between huts, refilling cups, and staying close to one of the elders who negotiates trades like a hawk in wool slippers. She haggles not with harsh words, but with subtle shrugs and the slow tilt of her chin. She's exchanging 3 smoked trout, a fine wool shawl, and a set of boar tusks for a single bronze brooch. It's not about what it's worth, she murmurs. It's about what it means. The traders say they've come from the south, weeks of travel over muddy roads and narrow passes. One even gestures vaguely toward the sea. They don't speak your dialect, not entirely, but through shared gestures and a few loan words, the point gets across. Historians still argue about the full extent of Iron Age trade networks. Were these small exchanges like this part of vast continental webs, or mostly local bartering between neighboring tribes? Evidence suggests both. Some objects like Mediterranean amphorae or Baltic amber have been found hundreds of miles from their source, but the roots remain a bit of a mystery. You browse the wares laid out near the fire. There are little surprises everywhere. A comb carved from horn in the shape of a deer, a fragment of dyed textile so vivid you swear it's enchanted, even a small tin bell that lets out the tiniest, clearest chime. And then there's the fringe item. One of the traders pulls out what looks like an impossibly thin blade, not of iron, but bronze. From a tomb, he says cryptically, tracing the edge with reverence. Still sharp. You touch it and feel it chill. The elder quickly waves it away. Bad luck, she says, probably for the best. You trade a small leather pouch you helped stitch for a chunk of beeswax and a few herbs wrapped in cloth. Not exactly high finance, but you feel good about it. Someone behind you tries to barter an entire chicken for a handful of beads. The chicken, of course, escapes mid-negotiation and causes minor chaos. By midday, the village smells like celebration. There's food cooking, flatbread sizzling on stones, herbs thrown onto the coals just to scent the air, and some sort of stewed meat laced with wild onions. The traders are staying the night, and the atmosphere is warm, crackling. Curious, you sit with a group listening to one of the visitors tell a story in broken speech and wild hand gestures. Something about a sea serpent, a swallowed canoe, and a goat that saved the day. It makes very little sense, but earns a round of applause anyway. Here's something odd. One of the traders shows off a coin and actual stamped metal disc. Most people squint at it. Why would anyone trust a little circle instead of a sack of grain? Someone mutters. Coins are still rare in this region. Not yet widely used, but they're coming. Slowly, like a whisper of the future. You retreat after dark, head full of sounds and smells and unfamiliar words. The fire burns low in the center of the village, and you can still hear the faint laughter of those trading stories or bargaining over a bit more cloth. You wonder how many hands the brooch you saw has passed through, how far the amber traveled. Who first shaped that comb? These are not just items. They're travelers, too. They carry memory, touch, intention. And in a world before receipts or price tags, trust is the currency. When someone says a blade cuts true, you believe it, or you learn the hard way. When someone trades a loaf of bread for an axe head, it's not about fairness. It's about relationships, patterns, recurrence. Like a pulse in the land, You drift off imagining your little salt cake halfway across the continent someday, in a land where the sun feels different, and no one has ever heard of your muddy village but they know the weight of what you gave. The Iron Age is a barter world, but more than that, it's a story exchange told in textiles, and tin, and honey, and iron, and salt, in the long stretch of roads that don't show up on maps. And somewhere, right now, a stranger is wondering what your comb might mean. The traders are gone by morning, leaving behind hoof prints, a few extra smiles, and stories that will ripple through village gossip for weeks. Life settles quickly back into routine. But you've been invited to help with something a little more thrilling than basket weaving or oat stirring. Now, before you get too excited, you won't be the one throwing spears. You're part of the tracking party, the people who move ahead, crouching in the underbrush, and reading the land like it's a scroll the animals wrote with their hooves. Still, it's a chance to stretch your legs, get muddy, and potentially spot a boar before it spots you. Your group sets out early, mist still clinging to the trees. The Iron Age forest is dense, whispery, and full of subtle cues. A snapped twig here, a clump of fur, snagged on a thorn there. One of the older trackers shows you how to press your palm into soft earth if it still holds the shape of a hoof after a minute. The animal passed recently. The forest smells of moss, wet bark, and something a bit gamey boar musk. If you had to guess, these beasts are dangerous. Not cartoon pigs. They can weigh over 300 pounds, with tusks sharp enough to tear a man's thigh in half. You try not to think too hard about that. Historians still argue over how coordinated Iron Age hunting parties really were. Were they seasonal rituals involving whole tribes? Or smaller, frequent expeditions led by specialists? Judging by the casual competence of the group you're with, it's probably both, depending on the season and the stakes. You pass a standing stone half buried in ivy, etched with faint spirals. Someone spits and touches it for luck. It's easy to forget how spiritual the forest is to these people's sacred groves, animal spirits, and whispered oaths that you don't fully understand. You murmur a quiet thanks in advance to whatever guardian might be lurking. Then comes a sound, a rustle, a low grunt, the snapping of twigs. Everyone freezes. A hand gestures. You drop low. The lead hunter signals it's not a boar this time, but deer, sleek, cautious, and heartbreakingly fast. The spears are ready, the angle measured. You hold your breath as a buck steps into a clearing, backlit like a ghost. There's a brief silence, then a dull. One spear finds its mark. The deer bolts, stumbles, and falls. There's no cheer, no high-fives, just quiet respect. You help carry the animal back using a pole between shoulders. It's heavy, and the path is slick, but no one complains. The meat will feed half the village, and the hide will become cloaks, shoes, maybe even the bones will be carved into needles or fishhooks. Nothing is wasted, not even the hooves there boiled into glue. At camp, the deer is laid out on a large flat stone. The butchering is swift and practiced. You learn what stringy meat really means. Someone removes the heart with care and sets it aside. It'll be roasted and shared by the hunters later. A kind of reward. You'll probably get a slice if you play your cards right. Now here's your quirky tidbit. Some Iron Age communities believe that deer could pass between worlds, realms of the living, dead, and divine. Catching one wasn't just luck. It meant permission. A few of the older folk whisper prayers as they handle the carcass, just in case. The fire burns high tonight. There's something primal about a hunting fire. The smoke doesn't just curl. It raises with purpose. Sparks fly up like tiny spirits. You're handed a strip of roasted venison. It's smoky, rich, and slightly sweet. Best thing you've tasted since ever. One of the younger hunters plays a flute made of bone, and a few people hum along. Someone tells a story of a man who tried to tame a boar and ended up marrying a hedgehog instead. The punchline is lost on you, but everyone else roars with laughter. As the night deepens, you notice a bit of weariness in your bones-earned weariness. Your muscles buzz with tired satisfaction. Your skin smells like wood smoke, and your mind is full of blurred trees, animal tracks, and the deep thrum of something older than language. You lie back on a bed of soft moss and furs. The stars twinkle through the canopy. Do you think about the balance this world strikes? Between wildness and order, risk and reward, reverence and necessity. The Iron Age hunter doesn't just chase food, he enters a dialogue with the forest. Every step, every track, every killet, all echoes. And for all the steel teeth and stone circles and storm gods we've encountered, this might be the moment that defines the age most of all. People huddled together, warming their hands by a fire, giving thanks to the animal they took, and savoring the silence that follows a full belly. Tomorrow, there'll be more grinding, more hauling, more careful carving of tools. But tonight, you rest, with the smell of meat still on your fingertips and the weight of the day in your legs. You close your eyes. You've survived another day in a world where nature gives, but only if you know how to ask. The fire from last night is now just embers, faintly glowing beneath a crust of ash. You stir, stretch, and rub the stiffness from your neck. Today's task, something quieter, but no less significant. Crafting, after all, it's not just brute force and roaring fires that built the Iron Age. Its hands. Calloused, clever, and constantly moving. You're spending the day in the workshop huts, shadowing those who shape the things that make life possible and beautiful. First stop, he greets you with a nod, barely looking up from the dear owner. He's carving. His tools are simple sharpened flint, sandstone, a bit of spit, and infinite patience. You sit beside him as he smooths the curve of what will become a sewing needle. From bone, durable, slender, strong enough to stitch hide. He tells you well, mutters more than tells you how he once carved a set of gaming pieces for it. All lost in the river, he grumbles. You ask if he went after them. What? And drowned for dice, he chuckles to himself. Next, pottery. The clay here is coarse and gritty, but with enough kneading, it starts to behave. You help stomp it with your feet, mixing in crushed shell and stratumper. They call it, keeps the parts from cracking in the fire. The patera woman with arms like tree branches shows you how to shape coils of clay into a vessel. No wheel here, just hands, smoothing and stacking. You try to copy her, but your pot sags like a startled badger. She gives it a pity pat and starts again. Here's a mainstream fact to consider. Iron Age pottery helps archaeologists date entire settlements. The style, pattern, and composition of ceramic shards tell us who lived where, when, and what they were cooking. It's basically the carbon footprint of prehistory, brittle, scattered, and ridiculously informative. Across the lane, a weaver is setting up a loom. The frame is upright, wooden, and taller than you, weighted with stones to keep the threads taut. She moves through the warp like a spider in a trance, fingers darting, twisting wool dyed with plant roots and crushed berries. It smells faintly like boiled moss and hope. Weaving is serious business. A single tunic takes weeks to finish. The designs, not just decoration. Some patterns signal tribal identity, marital status, or social rank, and others, well, some just look pretty. You know how it is. Historians still argue whether textile production in Iron Age Europe was mainly domestic or involved larger, specialized workshops. Evidence suggests both. In wealthier settlements, entire outbuildings were dedicated to loom work. In smaller communities like yours, everyone pitches in. Midday arrives, and you join the carver's apprentice outside. She's whittling a spoon from older wood. Tools feed people, she says matter-of-factly. Jewelry feeds their pride. You glance at her necklace beads of baked clay, a copper disc, and what might be a dog's tooth. It does look impressive. Now, for your quirky tidbit, in parts of Iron Age Britain, people used antler combs. Not for grooming, but for decorating. Unless you were a particularly stylish. Later, you're handed a file made from fish skin and told to polish a small iron blade. It is not sharp, yet that'll come later in the forge butt smoothing the edge. is oddly satisfying. The iron gleams as you work, catching the afternoon sun like a wink from history. By evening, the workshop is quieter. The day's work is laid out on low tables and straw mats, curved spoons, half-finished bowls, pots drying in the shade, strips of dyed wool fluttering in the breeze, and a delicate bone, all so fine it looks like it could sow dreams. This is the hum of Iron Age life, the daily manufacture of survival. No machines, no factories, just tools, fire, and time. Every object has a backstory. Every tool once rested in someone's palm. Every stitch is a thread between now and then. And then there's the sound. Not hammering or scraping or the clack of weaving weights, those have quieted for now. It's the soft chorus of satisfaction, of people admiring what they made, of fingers brushing clay, rims, eyes inspecting carved lines, shoulders relaxing after a job well done. You stretch your own fingers, surprised at the ache. You didn't forge a sword or invent a wheel, but you did shape something with your hands. Something real. Later, you lie in your corner of the longhouse, tracing little circles on your palm with a carved stick. You wonder if future generations will find your lopsided pot and laugh, or will they squint at it in a museum, whispering, "How fascinating, a ceremonial ladle." Either way, it'll outlive you. The Iron Age may be remembered for its metal, but without its makers, eats potters, weavers, and carvers, it would be little more than broken stone and cold ash. You close your eyes, warmed by the thought that someone, somewhere, will hold your awkward little clay bowl, and imagine the hand that formed it. And who knows, maybe it'll inspire them to make something of their own. There's a quiet tension in the village today, not fear. Exactly more like a kind of buzzing undercurrent, the way the air feels before a storm. You catch glances, bean exchange, baskets packed, gear inspected. It doesn't take long to find out why. You're going on the move. Today, you experience what it's like to migrate. Iron Age seasonal movement is a part of life here. Maybe the grazing fields have worn thin, or a nearby water source has grown brackish. Perhaps it's politica. Neighboring clans' presence has grown uncomfortably close, or someone offended someone with the wrong kind of prayer over a harvest loaf. The reasons shift like the wind, but the result is the same. It's time to pack up, take what you can carry, and leave behind everything else. You're helping load a cart of squat, creaky thing pulled by 2 oxen that clearly believe they're overworked. Around you, others wrap bundles of clothing, roll up woolen mats, and secure cooking tools with leather cords. There's no mass panic, no dramatic fleeing, just the slow, deliberate effort of uprooting. You handed a bundle of firewood and a woven pouch of dried beans. Welcome to the supply team. Some huts will stay behind, mostly the stone ones. They are permanent fixtures now, like silent sentinels for whoever might pass this way next. Others, made from lighter materials, are taken apart, their timber and thatch bundled for reuse. The efficiency is impressive and, somehow, a little heartbreaking. These walls held laughter, arguments, sleep. Historians still argue whether most Iron Age settlements were permanent or semi-nomadic. Evidence suggests a mix. Some regions show signs of long-term habitation layer upon layer of hearth, pottery shards, and rebuilt structures. Others hint at mobility, with temporary shelters and middens that vanish after a season or two. As your group sets out, the landscape unfolds like a slow-moving scroll. You follow a ridge path, bordered by brambles and hawthorn trees. Birds cry overhead. Occasionally, you pass standing stones or charcoal rings, evidence of others who've walked this way. Every step feels like a whisper from the past. Traveling like this isn't glamorous. It's not the epic march of armies or the grand exodus of legends. It's mud. It's sweat. It's keeping kids from wandering off into the gorse. You trudge, shifting your bundle from shoulder to shoulder, stomach rumbling faintly. Someone starts humming a low tune to pass the time. You reach a river around midday, shallow but fat. A narrow causeway of stones cuts across, slick and half submerged. Crossing is slow, Careful work. Your sandals are soaked instantly, and the current tugs at your ankles like a needy toddler. But you make it, laughing despite yourself. On the far bank, a man marks a tree with a blade clean X in the bark. So we know we've passed this way. He says, later. You find similar markings on rocks, twisted twigs in the shape of symbols, small piles of white stones. Wayfinding in a world without maps. A fringe theory you overheard last night comes to mind. Some Iron Age. People believed in land memory, that the earth itself remembered who stepped where, and that paths formed not from footprints, but from intention. Walk with purpose, and the land will guide you back. Mid-afternoon brings a break. The group settles near a copse of oak trees, and fires are lit for boiling water. You chew on a strip of dried meat and some withered plums, grateful for anything that doesn't involve oats. The children play a game with stones, and an old woman ties charms from grass, blades, and feathers, tossing them into the breeze. Then the question floats out. Where will we go next? The answers vary. Some want to return to old land. Others dream of new hills, closer to the coast, or with better soil. One younger boy says he wants to live where the stars are closer. No one laughs. That's a valid preference. By early evening, you reach a clearing nestled between two gentle hills. The land here is rich, soft underfoot, bordered by woods, and near a trickling spring. A good spot. People fan out, pacing, testing the slope, smelling the air. And then, just like that, the decision is made. Here. This will be home, at least for now. Work begins instantly. Fire pits are dug, tent frames go up. The bones of the new village take shape with uncanny speed. You help gather kindling, set stones in a circle for a hearth, and even help dig a new latrine pit. Frankly, is a little too close to the sleeping area, but no one's perfect. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, Iron Age migrants buried tokens, bits of broken pottery, bones, or even braided Harat new sites as a way to claim the land spiritually. You witness something similar here. A young woman buries a small carved bead beneath her hut's threshold. So the place knows me, she says, as though it's the most obvious thing in the world. The stars come out just as the fires begin to crackle. The clearing fills with quiet conversation, steaming bowls of stew, and tired satisfaction. You lie back on a wool mat, still smelling faintly of river and clay, and look up. It's odd. You think how home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's people carrying their stories, their tools, their seeds and bones into the unknown. Sometimes it's a fire, a bowl, and someone who remembers your name. The Iron Age may be hard, but it's never aimless. Every step matters. Every path, even the muddy ones, lead somewhere. And for tonight, at least, it leads here to a new start under the stars, with tired feet and a full belly. Morning creeps in with a fine mist rolling over the hills, softening the world into a watercolor of grays and greens. The new settlement is quiet, save for the crackle of rekindled fires and the soft grunt of someone stretching their back after a night on packed earth. Today, you'll witness something as old as Iron Age culture. Itself ritual and religion. No matter where you settle, the invisible world travels with you. Spirits of the land, ancestors, gods of weather and grain, they're not left behind when you move. They expect their due, and today, it's time to honor them. You follow a small procession toward a clearing marked with standing stones. Their lichen-covered surfaces etched with swirling lines and faint, finger-width carvings. You're not entirely sure what they mean. And honestly, neither is anyone else. Just the old ways. Someone mutters, adjusting the feather in their hair. The priest, if you can call him, that is not robed in gold or incense clouds. He's just older, quieter, and rarely makes eye contact. But when he speaks, everyone listens. He holds a carved wooden staff and wears a torque of twisted bronze. Around his neck hangs a pouch that smells like crushed sage, salt, and maybe something stranger, something fermented. The ceremony begins not with chants, but with silence. It stretches out like a drumbeat waiting to fall. Then, slowly, a rhythmic tapping begins. Sticks against stone, stones against hands. It's a heartbeat. You tap along, unsure, but welcomed. A basket is passed around. Inside, small offerings. Not gold, not jewels, items of meaning. A child's carved whistle, a twist of dyed wool, a sliver of honeycomb. These are laid at the base of the largest stone, and incense-dried juniper and crushed barkies, burned in a shallow bowl. Mainstream fact break. Many Iron Age communities in Europe practiced the belief that spirits inhabit all things: rivers, stones, trees, even tools. Archaeological finds of ritual deposits in water or buried under homes suggest a culture deeply tied to symbolic gestures. A spear cast into a lake, not waste. As the smoke curls, the older man murmurs words that might be a prayer, a song, or just memory. His voice blends with the breeze. You don't understand the language fully, but it wraps around you like mist. Someone beside you presses a flower into your hand, yarrow, maybe, and whispers, for protection. You place it at the stone's base, feeling oddly serious about it, like you've participated in something both personal and ancient. But here's a quirky tidbit. In some Iron Age traditions, people left food offerings in storage pits, not for themselves, but for the spirits they believed helped protect the harvest. Think of it as the world's earliest thank you basket, minus the wine and cheese. After the ritual, there's no sermon or singing, just quiet nods and people return to their tasks. You, however, linger a bit longer at the stone, watching the smoke trail upward, wondering if anyone or anything is watching back. Back in the village, you see other forms of ritual in play. A woman weaves protective knots into a child's tunic. A man paints ochre symbols around his new doorway. A cluster of teenagers walk 3 circles around a sacred tree before splitting off to gather wood. None of it's dramatic, just daily acts of reverence. Historians still argue whether Iron Age religions were polytheistic in a structured pantheon sense, or more fluid spirits of place, ancestors, and nature forces without centralized mythology. Evidence is murky. No written records survive from the practitioners themselves. Only what others observed or what survives in soil and stone. You sit beside an elder mending a charm bracelet of bone discs and fox teeth. She tells you stories as her fingers work of sky gods who ride wild geese, and forest spirits who turn invisible when you step on their footprints. You've probably met one, she says, peering at you sideways. They like strangers. You try to smile, but she's already moved on, threading sinew through a bead shaped like an eye. By mid-afternoon, it's clear that belief here isn't about fear, it's about relationship. The world is alive. Everything listens. Everything remembers. You help clean the communal hearth, scraping out ashes into a woven basket to be scattered at the edge of the fields. For fertility, someone explains, not quite meeting your eyes. You nod solemnly. Who's going to argue with fireplace, ash magic? As night returns, another, more casual ritual unfolds. People gather to share storysmiths, mostly, though a few might be exaggerated hunt and tale. One begins with a woman claiming her grandmother once married a bear and had 5 children. You snort, she shrugs. They made great stew. Someone else tells a version of the world's beginning that involves a frog, a thunderstorm, and a singing rock. Someone else insists they saw lights dancing above the hills last spring. Spirits, they say, or ancestors checking in. Someone claims they saw their father's ghost fixing a fence. It's clear that in this world, myth bleeds into memory. You're never quite sure where one ends and the other begins. As the fire burns lower, someone places a new bundle into the flames. For the ones we miss, they whisper. No names, no speech, just flame and silence. You don't ask who, you just nod and sit quietly. You glance up at the stars, remembering the ritual from the morning. What was that flower again, Yarrow? You touch your wrist, where a few tiny petals are still stuck to your skin. You didn't believe in much before this journey, but now you're not so sure. You've seen people speak to stones, weave symbols into sleeves, leave bread in hollow trees, and somehow it feels real. Like belief itself is a kind of power. Even if no gods are watching, someone is always remembering. And that's enough, at least for tonight. Dawn spills over the horizon like melted gold, pooling in the creases of the land. It glints off damp leaves, brushes the tops of thatched roofs, and finally lands on your face, nudging you awake. There's no time to stretch or dawdle this morning. You're heading out on a journey. The settlement isn't alone out here. Trade, alliances, feasts, and family ties all stretch like invisible strings across Iron Age Europe. And every so often, someone like you is chosen to follow one of those strings to another community. Today, you're traveling between tribes. You're not going alone, of course. A small group is making the trip. 2 men carrying bundles of woven goods, a woman with a basket of carved ornaments, and a wiry teen entrusted with the most important cargo of all, a small, tightly wrapped satchel of iron nails. Yes, nails, they're precious. You could trade them for cattle if you're persuasive. You shoulder your own burden, a pack of dried meat, coarse bread, and a jar of salt. Salt, by the way, is another low-key superstar of Iron Age commerce. In some regions, it was worth nearly its weight in metal. Mainstream fact for the day. Entire Iron Age settlements in Europe, like Hallstatt in Austria, were founded around salt mining operations. Not flashy, but incredibly valuable. The journey begins on foot, as all journeys do. The trail winds through forest, then opens into marshy grassland. Birds chatter overhead. Midges bite your neck. You swat at them with increasing desperation. Here comes your quirky tidbit. Travelers in the Iron Age sometimes wore woven insect veils, thin mesh masks made of plant fibers to keep bugs out of their faces. You don't have one. You wish you did? Around midday, your group stops beneath a twisted hawthorn tree. The teen carefully unwraps the nail satchel and checks its contents. You peer over his shoulder. 12 nails, each one hand-forged and gleaming faintly with oil. They're not just fasteners, they're statements. Proof of your community's skill. You wonder what they'll be traded for. Grain, perhaps the elusive jet beads that the elders covet. As you walk, the landscape changes. Fields give way to scrub, then forest again. Eventually, smoke appears on the horizon, curling lazily into the sky. Another settlement. Not hostile, hopefully, but still, you shift the strap of your pack nervously. At the edge of the community, you're met by 3 figures. Not warriors. Thank goodness, just a welcoming party. One carries a spear, but he's leaning on it more than brandishing it. The others offer bread and a clay jug of something sharp and earthy. You drink politely and try not to cough. The exchange begins without ceremony. Gifts are offered and received with quiet nods. A bundle of your dyed wool disappears into a woman's arms. In return, you receive a slab of preserved pork. Someone appraises your salt jar with raised brows. You trade it for a basket of fresh apples. Historians still argue whether Iron Age trade was strictly utilitarian or bound up in layers of social ritual. Was it just stuff for stuff? Or was it about status, honor, and maintaining bonds? The truth, as always, is likely both. Trade kept you alive, but it also made you known. There's time to explore the new village. It's not so different from yours. Roundhouses, storage pits, a communal hub. But there are little differences. Their thatch is bound tighter. Their bone tools have different notches. Their children wear shells instead of carved wood. You watch a man carve spirals into a horn drinking vessel. He uses a flint blade and resin ink. Each line tells a direction. He says, how we got here, where we'll go next. He offers the horn for you to try. You sip, and the drink tastes like wet bark and regret. You hand it back quickly. At nightfall, there's music, a simple flute, a hollow drum. A woman sings in a tongue you don't quite understand, but the melody clings to your bones. You sit beside a stranger who offers roasted chestnut. You laugh about the bug bites and the sore feet. You feel far from home and yet oddly safe. Before sleep, You're given a sleeping space near the hearth. A child snores softly next to you, curled like a cat. You look around at the unfamiliar ceiling, the flickering shadows, the unfamiliar but comforting rhythm of life. The next morning, after a breakfast of oat cakes and sour berries, your group prepares to return. The nail satchel is now gone traded for smoked fish, a coil of rope, and a small copper amulet, shaped like the sun. It glints from the neck of the apprentice, who grins as he tucks it under his tunic. As you leave, someone presses a charm into your palm. A little clay disc, marked with a spiral. For safe travel, they say. You tuck it into your belt pouch. On the road home, your group walks a little faster. Feet are lighter. Packs are heavier. The forest seems less threatening now. Even the midges less aggressive. You think about that horn, the man's carving. How we got here. Where we'll go next. The Iron Age wasn't static. People didn't just huddle in villages, terrified of the next hill. They moved. They met. They shared stories, goods, and sometimes even bloodlines. Roads weren't paved, but they existed in footsteps, fire, smoke, and memory. You reach the hill above your own settlement just as the sun begins to dip. The roofs glow, orange smoke rises. A child runs to meet you, shrieking with joy at the apples. Someone hugs a teen and laughs at his necklace. The amulet's glow catches your eye. You touch your own spiral charm, just to be sure it's still there. You've been out into the world now, and the world didn't bite. It traded, smiled, and handed you You read barely through the gate when word spreads through the village like wildfire. People cluster around you, eyes wide, hands tugging at bags and baskets to see what treasures you brought. It's not just curiosity, it's economy. Because tonight, it's market night. The timing couldn't be better. Once every moon cycle, your community transforms. The central clearing usually reserved for children chasing dogs or elders squinting at a buzzing hub of barter, gossip, and controlled chaos. And you weary traveler turned trader get to be right in the thick of it. By twilight, the space is glowing, not from lamps, but from torches jammed into hollowed-out logs. Flames dancing like gossiping spirits. Every family has laid out their wares. Bundles of dried herbs, nets of goose feathers, pots still warm from the kill, strings of beads that clack softly when touched. You add your contribution, a jar of thick, grainy salt, and the apples you traded for. They vanish in minutes. A woman hands you a little wedge of aged cheese in return. Not for eating all at once, she warns and winks. You ignore her and take a bite anyway. It tastes like regret and joy mixed together. Now, a mainstream fact. Iron Age communities often held regular, organized market days, especially in larger settlements or tribal centers. These were essential, not just for commerce, but for forming alliances, exchanging news, and even arranging marriages. In some regions, entire hillforts were designed to accommodate large market gatherings. As you wander the circle, the noise, Rissa's barking. Somewhere nearby, a reed pipe begins to play a sleepy tune. Children shriek with glee as they chase a dog wearing a necklace made of You overhear a young man trying to swap a particularly ugly clay jug for a rabbit pelt. It holds dreams, he claims. Nightmares, too. But they're quieter. The woman frowns, sniffs the jug, and walks away. That's your quirky tidbit for the night. Some Iron Age vessels were intentionally made lopsided or rough, believed to confuse malevolent spirits who might try to live in them. Because apparently, even evil spirits have standards. There's more than goods on offer here. A healer is gently poking at someone's swollen ankle. A pair of elders are loudly debating the best time to plant barley. A stranger with windburnt cheeks is telling a tale about a fish the size of a house. You're not sure he's exaggerating much. One corner of the market is reserved for music and matchmaking. Yes, in the Iron Age, these often went hand in hand. You watch as a circle of young people spin and stomp in time to a drum, hands brushing, eyes darting. It's not exactly subtle, but who needs subtle when there's firelight and fermented berry mead? Historians still argue whether these gatherings were spontaneous festivals or carefully managed Events overseen by local elites? There's evidence for both. Some show signs of structured stalls and permanent trading posts. Others, more temporary like this one, where your blanket becomes a shop just by sitting on it and pointing. You sit down next to the cheese woman, who is now selling painted pebbles. She claims they tell the future. You ask yours? She hands you one painted with spirals. You'll be fine, she says, unless you want. Comforting. As the moon climbs, the energy shifts. Trade slows. The fire grows. Someone starts roasting leeks. A storyteller rises, hair plaited like woven roots, and begins weaving a tale, something about a warrior who turned into a bird to escape a bear that turned into a river. You lose track halfway through and love it anyway. There's something ancient about all this, no, not just the Iron Age setting. The rhythm of gathering, the low buzz of shared space, the understanding that value isn't always measured in weight or it's how someone smiles when they hand you a cracked spoon and say, "This one stirs better than it looks." You take your final lap around the circle, now quieting, and swap a loose iron buckle for a pouch of dried berries. You'll eat half of them before bed. You'll regret nothing. Someone has started stacking up unused goods. In a shared pile, you contribute a poorly fired bowl from earlier in the week, the one with a wobble that makes it pour sideways. Within seconds, it's gone. Someone out there believes in it. And that's the quiet truth of the Iron Age market. Everyone is trying, failing, and creating in real time. There are no brands, no returns, just hands, trading with hands, hopeful that what you offer has worth. By the time the last embers are kicked into the dirt, you're smiling, your pack is lighter, but your mind is full. The rhythm of footsteps, laughter, fire, crackle, and flutes follows you home like an old song. And tomorrow, when someone asks where that lovely buckle came from, you'll say, "From a woman selling dreams and cheese." You wake with crumbs in your blanket and a berry seed stuck to your cheek. A mild breeze carries the lingering scent of last night's fire, charred leeks, and the kind of unwashed joy that only comes from a proper Iron Age market. But there's no lounging around today, because this morning, you're headed to a place most people in your settlement talk about in whispers: the Sacred Grove. You don't go alone. No one ever does. A group of 8 walks with you, each carrying small, offering splint knives, bone pendants, animal teeth, even a half-full jar of honey. It's not about what you bring. Really, it's about the gesture, the journey, the quiet hush that falls over the group as the trees grow denser, taller, and older. Mainstream fact of the day. Iron Age communities across Europe often designated sacred spaces in springs, lakes, or mountaintops where offerings were left, rituals performed, and the divine acknowledged. There weren't stone temples with pews and sermons. The Iron Age version of spirituality was tied tightly to land, weather, and wild things. The path winds upward through a forest that feels impossibly still. No birds, no wind, just the sound of your feet brushing against pine needles and the occasional creak of someone else's leather pack. Then, the clearing. It's small, just a patch of mossy earth ringed by standing stones. One leans dramatically to the side, as if trying to eavesdrop on the grass. In the center, a shallow pit filled with ashes, bones, and tiny bronze figurines. Some are animals. Some are probably gods. You're not sure. The details are worn smooth. Now comes your quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have found ceremonial deposits of broken weapons and twisted jewelry in sacred Iron Age, sites deliberately damaged before being buried. Maybe to kill the object and release its spirit. Or maybe it was a weird flex. Look, we're so rich, we can smash swords. You kneel near the edge of the pit, careful not to disturb anything. From your pouch, you pull the clay spiral charm, the one given to you during the trade. Journey and place it gently beside a carved antler comb. The gesture is oddly emotional. Not sad, not even solemn, just ... grounding. Like telling the forest, "Hey, I was here. Historians still argue whether Iron Age spirituality was centralized religion or a patchwork of tribal customs. There were certainly druids in Celtic regions, but not every culture used that term. And even among Celts, their role remained slippery. Did they organize grand rites, sacrifice things, keep calendars, or were they just really persuasive guys with great beards? One of the elders with you murmurs something into the wind. You can't quite catch the words, but the tone is steady and low, like a lullaby or a warning. Another person sprinkles crushed herbs into the fire pit. A faint tempest of sage and something spicier floats into the air. Your nose twitches. A sudden rustle, just a squirrel. You pretend you didn't jump. The group doesn't linger. Sacred spaces aren't meant for sleepovers or snack breaks. You retreat the way you came, one by one, careful to walk single file between the trees. There's an unspoken agreement. No talking until you've crossed a creek, and when you do, it's like a spell breaks. Voices return. Someone cracks a joke. Someone else trips and swears gently. The ordinary world rushes back at the village. Life continues as if nothing sacred just happened. A child is throwing chicken feathers at a dog. Two people argue about who's supposed to fetch water. Your neighbor has decided to build a second woodpile just because you do your. Still carrying the hush of the grove, you start to notice things. The way the wind moves through certain trees. The way birds go silent before the rain. The way your own heartbeat sounds a little louder when you're rethinking about the stone that leaned toward the sky. You help someone patch a roof in the afternoon, but your mind drifts. The sun hits a puddle just right, and you swear. For a moment, it reflects a face. Not yours, not anyone's. Just a shape made of light, and maybe memory. Before sleep, you sit outside your round house and watch the moon rise. It's almost full. Pale, gold, heavy. You remember the bronze figure smooth, anonymous. You wonder what they're meant to represent. Protection, fear, hope. There's no bedtime story tonight. No flute music or market laughter. Just a soft chirp of insects and the sound of your own breath slowing. And in that silence, you feel something old not watching. Exactly. Just ... aware. That's the Iron Age for you. Full of smoke, mud, itchy tunic sand. A constant sense that you are not the center of the story. Just a humble thread in a fabric older than oak roots. The next morning, arise with dew-heavy grass and a sky that can decide if it wants to rain or shine. You stretch, bones popping like tiny firecrackers, and step outside into a hush that feels ... expectant. There's no work planned today. No errands. No distant trading trip or dramatic goat escape. Today, the whole settlement is preparing for the feast. Not just any feast, a seasonal one. The one where meat meets music. Where last year's failures are laughed at over mugs of fermented grain water. And where, if you're lucky, someone finally shares that recipe for spiced oatcakes that somehow don't taste like sadness. Mainstream fact for the night. Iron Age people celebrated many seasonal and agricultural festivals, especially tied to the cycles of sowing, harvesting, solstices. These weren't quiet affairs. They were community-defining events, often lasting for days, with rituals, games, storytelling, and a truly wild amount of communal food. But before the revelry, there's prep. And you're pulled in. Someone hands you a bundle of herbs and tells you to go rub the pig. You ask if that's a euphemism. It isn't. There's an actual pig. He looks at you with judgment. You rub. Nearby, a group of women are coloring textiles with natural dice-crushed berries, boiled bark, fermented leaves. The air smells like soup and ambition. One girl proudly holds up a scarf that's turned a delicate violet. She's immediately asked to make 20 more. In the central fire pit, a man is slowly turning a haunch of venison. He bastes it with honey and herbs, while singing a song that might be about love or Cheez-It-S. Either way, it smells divine. Quirky tidbit incoming. Some Iron Age feasts included theatrical performances. with villagers dressing as animals, spirits, or even seasons. One record from the Roman era describes tribal Britons leaping around in antler headdresses, possibly to represent forest gods or very enthusiastic deer. As the sun begins to dip, the feast truly kicks off. Fires are stoked, mugs passed, platters uncovered. Everyone crowds together, elders sitting cross-legged on wool blankets, kids stuffing roots into their cheeks, dogs slinking between ankles, hoping for scraps. And the food. Oh, the food. Roasted roots with ash-crisp skins, barley cakes smeared with soft cheese, honey-drizzled apples, stewed beans, charred fish wrapped in damp leaves, and in the middle of it all, a massive loaf of bread shaped like the sun, burnt on one side, perfect on the other. Just like you, someone plays a lyre. A young man sings a love ballad to a girl who's clearly not impressed. Someone else starts juggling stones. You laugh too hard and choke slightly on a turnip. That's the Iron Age romance for you. Historians still argue whether these celebrations were strictly religious or more community social, but the truth is probably both. Offerings were likely made before the meal. Prayers muttered to sky gods, river spirits, or whoever was listening. But after that, the party belonged to the people. Your neighbor nudges you and nods toward the dancers gathering near the fire. You wave them off at first. No thanks, my knees are from last season. But then, a child grabs your hand and pulls, and suddenly you're in it, stepping awkwardly between two older women who clearly know the steps. You fake it. No one minds. The rhythm matters more than the technique. Under the firelight, shadows stretch long. Voices rise and blur. Someone begins to tell a tale about a king who could talk to foxes. Someone else insists it actually happened. The mood turns giddy. You hear a joke about a goat, a druid, and a very confused Roman. You don't get it, but you laugh anyway. You sit beside the fire after the dancing, cheeks flushed and legs wobbly. Someone hands you a mug. You take a sip. It tastes like fermented bravery. The stars overhead are unusually bright. Maybe it's the clear air. Maybe it's the mead. But as you lean back, head resting against a lumpy wool sack, you feel something settle in your chest. A kind of warmth that isn't from the fire. This isn't just survival. It's connection. Not just to people, but to rhythm, to tradition, to a world that sings when it eats together. A child crawls into your lap, median, and falls asleep instantly. You stay very still. The fire crackles. Someone hums softly beside you. The feast isn't over, but the night is winding down. Later, when the flames die low and the air smells of ash and apple skins, you slip into your roundhouse with aching feet and a full belly. And as you curl up on your straw bed, the echo of laughter and lyres follows you into sleep. You wake to the kind of silence that only follows a truly excellent feast. Not just as if even the birds have hangovers. Your head is fuzzy, your feet still tingling from the memory of dancing, and your breath smells faintly of smoked trout and bad decisions. But there's no time to linger, because today, you're tagging along with the warriors. Not for battle, don't panic. No one's raiding a Roman outpost or charging into a hillfort with antler helmets. Not today. Anyway, this is a training day, which mostly means sweating and hitting things that won't hit back. Hopefully, mainstream fact for your mental notebook. Iron Age societies didn't all have standing armies, but many had elite warrior classes, young men who trained from adolescence, upheld tribal honor, and occasionally wore terrifying facial paint just for fun. Combat wasn't constant, but the threat of it always loomed. Your companions today are lean, alert, and already stretching when you arrive. One older warrior tosses you a round wooden shield. It's lighter than you expected, painted with a faded spiral pattern, and smells like pine, resin, and sweat. A younger fighter hands you a blunted spear and grins. Try not to stab your own foot. The training ground is a patch of flattened grass near the river. You've got woven practice targets, a few wooden weapons, and someone pretending to be the enemy using a goat skull tied to a stick. Intimidating, maybe mostly confusing. Your task is simple. Survive the drills. That means practicing stances, learning to jab without falling over, and understanding that your shield is your new best friend. Don't block with your face. Someone barks, you nod. Having just tried that, quirky tidbit time. Archaeological finds suggest that Iron Age warriors sometimes trained using mock duels while intoxicated as a way to mimic battle panic. So if you feel dizzy out there, maybe you're just historically accurate. After some clumsy swings and a near disaster involving a rock in your ankle, you start to get the rhythm. Feet planted wide, eyes locked. Push, don't swing. Watch their hips, not their hands. Someone shouts praise when you deflect a blow. You feel absurdly proud, like a puppy who just barked at a leaf. Later, you gather around the river to cool off. The warriors strip down and plunge into the icy current with loud yelps. You hesitate at the edge. It's cold, very cold. Then a splash hits your back, and it's no longer a choice. You're in. The water stings. You shriek. Everyone laughs. But as you float on your back, you realize why they do this. The world slows. The ache in your shoulders fades. Even the bruises feel ... earned. Historians still argue whether Iron Age warfare was mostly ritualized posturing or full-blown brutality. Some evidence points to formal challenges duels before a battle, symbolic gestures, weapons thrown into lakes as sacred offerings. But the wounds found on skeletal remains, they tell a different story. These weren't just show fights. People died, people defended, people mourned. After your swim, you lie on the grass, wrapped in a wool cloak. The older warrior sits beside you, sharpening a blade with rhythmic strokes. He tells you about a battle from his youth, how the fog rolled in thick and fast, how they painted their arms red to look bloody before the fight had even begun. Psychological warfare, Iron Age edition. He pauses and says, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's knowing which fear to listen to." You nod solemnly. Then he adds, "Also, never trust a man with dry boots. Means he didn't show up." You walk back toward the village with the group. Your legs aching, but your head oddly clear. The forest smells sweeter after a day of effort, like pine needles and slow-cooked earth. On the way, someone begins singing a chant used during battle prep. It's repetitive, guttural, almost hypnotic. Others join in. You hum along softly, not because you understand the words, but because you feel them. The tempo, the defiance, the unity. Back in the village, you watch as one of the warriors carefully oils his leathered gear. Another patches a tear in his tunic. A third carefully arranges a series of small pebbles into a spiral, part meditation, part superstition. Before sleep, you inspect your bruises. Impressive. You feel like a warrior, or at least a very sore intern. Your shield leans near your bed. Tomorrow, it'll go back to the training ground, but tonight, it stays. And as you drift off, body humming with the aftershock of adrenaline and laughter, you wonder how many dreams have been shaped by the rhythm of boots on grass, the thud of wood on hide, the roar of chants in mist-covered fields. You fall asleep smiling, because for once, your Iron Age fantasy didn't involve being chased by wolves. Just camaraderie, cold water, and learning how not to block with your face. When you wake, the first thing you hear is metal, not clashing swords or galloping hooves, just a steady clang of iron meeting stuff, rhythmic and almost musical, like someone hammering a lullaby into shape. You follow the sound, bare feet cool against the packed earth, until you find the blacksmith's forge. Smoke curls lazily from the chimney. The fire glows low and red. Not wild like a bonfire, but steady and contained, a tamed dragon at the heart of the village. Inside, it's hot enough to steam your eyebrows. The blacksmith, broad-backed, soot-streaked arms, like tree trunks, barely glances up as you step in. Grab the bellows. He grunts, "You do. You have no idea what you're doing." But it feels like the right kind of terrifying. Mainstream fact time. The Iron Age was defined by the mastery of iron smelting and forging. Iron tools were sharper, more durable, and far more plentiful than their bronze predecessors. Blacksmiths became central figures in their communities, because here's the thing, iron isn't easy. It doesn't melt like bronze. It must be smelted at blistering temperatures, then forged through brute strength, timing, and a dash of stubborn optimism. The process feels more like coaxing than creating, inviting the metal to take shape, than convincing it not to fall apart. As you work the bellows, the forge flares bright. The blacksmith pulls a glowing ingot from the coals and places it on the anvil. He hammers with slow, practiced strikes. You can almost hear the shape revealing itself in each blow. Quirky tidbit alert. In some Iron Age myths, blacksmiths were believed to possess divine or mystical powers. In Celtic lore, some were associated with gods of fire and transformation. To outsiders, the process must have looked like alchemy taking dull rock and turning it into blades, plowshares, and the occasional fancy fibula brooch. The blacksmith pauses to quench the piece in a bucket. Steam erupts with a hiss. He inspects the metal and nods, handing it to you. Nail, he says. It is, in fact, the most perfect nail you've ever seen. You watch as he works on other projects. A curved blade for a scythe, an ornate dagger with a twisted grip, a horseshoe that looks suspiciously like a good luck charm. Each item tells a story not just of utility, but of craft, of care. Historians still argue whether Iron Age blacksmiths were freelancers, tribal servants, or semi-religious figures. Some believe they traveled between villages, spreading innovation like soot-covered apostles. Others say they stayed put, jealously guarding their techniques. Maybe it was both. Maybe each community had one, and that person was both revered and a little feared. Later, you help grind an edge on a blade. It's loud, messy, and your arm goes numb halfway through. But when the blacksmith tests the result on a strip of cured hide and it slices clean, he actually smiles. You feel like you've been knighted with soot. During a break, he tells you about the different kinds of iron: bog iron from marsh, iron sand from rivers, harder ores, dug from deep pits, each with its own quirks. He swears he can smell the difference. You're not sure if that's impressive or a sign he needs more fresh air. Before leaving, he places a small iron pendant in your hand. It's crudely shaped like the sun, hammered thin, slightly lopsided. Protection, he says simply. You thank him, touched in a way you don't quite know how to describe. On the way back, you pass by farmers using iron-tipped tools in the fields. Kids throwing iron hoops down paths. A woman with iron shears trimming wool. It's everywhere. Once you notice, quietly revolutionizing everything it touches. At your roundhouse, you hang the sun pendant near your bed. It glints faintly in the firelight, humble but solid. A token not of wealth or power, but of process, of fire made useful, of transformation that sticks around. As you lie down, the heat of the forge still clings to your skin, like a memory that refuses to cool. And your dreams come easy tonight, full of glowing embers, whispered spells and smoke, and the endless ring of the anvil, shaping the future, one spark at a time. You stir before dawn to the earthy scent of dew and damp wool. But today, there's an undercurrent, strange, electric tension in the air. It's not fear, exactly. More like curiosity wrapped in unease. Something or someone is coming. When you emerge, the village is already buzzing. Not panicked, not hurried, just alert. People murmur in low voices, glancing up the main path. Children are kept close. Warriors tighten their belts. Elders lean on carved walking sticks, a little more heavily than usual. Word travels fast in the Iron Age. Even without Wi-Fi or text alerts, a foreign delegation is arriving. Traders, outsiders, maybe even nobles, depending on who's embellishing the story. Mainstream fact first. Iron Age societies didn't live in isolation. Trade networks stretched astonishing distances. Tin, salt, furs, dyes, wine, olive oil objects moved. Ideas moved. People moved. And when they arrived, they brought their languages, their customs, and their weird snacks. You watch as a line of travelers approaches the village, 5 of them, dressed in layered tunics dyed in colors you haven't seen before. Their boots are finer, their hair slicked back with fragrant oil. One of them wears a brooch shaped like a leaping deer. Bold move. They're met at the gate by your village elders, who offer the universal Iron Age greeting: flatbread, cured meat, and a slightly suspicious nod. You're tucked nearby, pretending to inspect a basket of turnips while eavesdropping like a professional. They speak in accented tones, familiar words with unfamiliar cadence. One offers a handful of glass beads, translucent blue and green, and you nearly drop your turnip. They shimmer like magic in the morning light. Fringe tidbit for the curious. Some Iron Age communities believed glass beads held spiritual or healing powers, especially the eye beads that looked like they were watching you back. So yes, that accessory might also double as a ghost repellent. Fashion meets function. The visitors unpack a few more. Wonders bronze mirrors, carved ivory combs, tiny amphorae of thick, fragrant oil. In return, the locals bring iron tools, wool cloth, salt blocks, and a carved stone amulet that looks suspiciously like a hedgehog. Negotiations begin in earnest. No haggling, just subtle games, delicate pauses, careful phrasing, polite stares. It's like watching a poker game played with mutton and metaphors. Historians still argue whether Iron Age trade was fully organized or mostly ad hoc. Some evidence points to elite merchant classes and well-defined roots, proto-corporate vibes. Other clues suggest it was more informal, reliant on family ties, word of mouth, and good old-fashioned gossip. Later, you're invited to join the evening meal. The visitors are seated as honored guests, and the feast is a kind of show local specialties laid out like a greatest hits album. Roasted duck, smoked eel, barley cakes, fermented berries. Someone even breaks out the rare honey-stuffed hazel. This is serious diplomacy. After a few mugs of mead, everyone relaxes. One of the foreign women sings a song in her language, slow and mournful, like waves lapping against a forgotten shore. A local warrior responds with a ribald tale about a dancing pig and a stolen belt buckle. Somehow, it all balances out. You find yourself beside one of the traders, inspecting a small bronze pendant shaped like a spiral. He tells you it comes from far to the south, where the hills glow red at sunset and the rivers never freeze. His eyes twinkle. You nod like you totally understand. He offers it to you, a gift. Back in your roundhouse that night, the pendant in your palm, you reflect on how these people so different in dress, speech, and smell somehow feel oddly familiar. Maybe it's the universal things: shared hunger, shared laughter, the way everyone pretends not to be cold. The Iron Age wasn't just war and work and iron. It was connection, not just the kind forged in blood or bronze, but in music, spice, and the occasional wildly overpriced trinket. Cultures collided, but they also merged, braided together like hair or cord or fate. You fall asleep hearing fragments of songs in languages you don't know, smelling a blend of wool, wood smoke, and something floral and unfamiliar. The world just got bigger, and it fits perfectly in your dreams. You wake to the soft hush of mist curling low across the fields, the kind of morning where the world seems to hold its breath. Even the birds keep quiet, as if nature itself knows it's the end of something or the start of something else entirely. Outside, the village moves at a gentler pace. No iron clanging today, no wild stories or traveling merchants. Just the familiar rhythm of daily life. Hands weaving thread, feet pacing to the well, a sleepy goat stretching in the sun. You head out past the edge of the settlement, following a winding trail lined with heather and dew-slick stones. It's a path worn smooth by generations of memory carved into the land. And there, at the top of the low hill, it waits for you, a burial mound. Ancient, even by Iron Age standards, covered in wild grass and guarded by standing stones, each carved with spiral patterns and weathered faces. You sit quietly beside one, letting your fingers trace the grooves, like reading a forgotten book. Mainstream fact. Iron Age people buried their dead with objects. They believed weapons, jewelry, sometimes animals. Graves weren't just resting places. They were messages, testaments, warnings, promises. Today, the elders are preparing to add another stone someone important passed last night. And while the sadness is palpable, there's also something deeply comforting about the way everyone knows exactly what to do. You're invited to help, carrying woven cloth, folding it gently around the offerings. A carved spoon, a polished bead, a sliver of iron shaped like a tiny blade. Nothing extravagant, just deeply personal. The echoes of a life, bundled in meaning. As the ceremony begins, voices chant softly. Someone adds fragrant herbs to the fire. Smoke rises and slow spirals fitting. Really, for a world where nothing ever ends, it just shifts. Quirky tidbit. Some Iron Age graves have revealed curious things: enamel skulls placed deliberately under feet, dice tucked into boots, and in one case, a severed hand resting beside a perfectly intact comb. Ritual, joke, you'll never know. That's the magic of it. Historians still argue whether Iron Age burials were primarily religious, social, or both. Were they guided by a strict priestly class? Or did every family have their own blend of superstition, tradition, and local flair? The truth, as always, is probably buried somewhere in between. As the fire crackles and the mound receives its newest story, you find yourself staring out across the land of fields, forests, rivers, stone circles, all stitched together into a world, both ancient and strangely alive. It hits you just how far you've come, from ducking behind hedges to avoid wild to hammering nails beside a blacksmith, to trading jokes with foreign merchants. You've hunted, feasted, buried the dead, and danced by torchlight. And somehow, it all feels normal now. This isn't a story about kings or conquests or timelines etched in textbooks. It's a story about people like you, people who worried about the weather, argued over turnips, prayed to trees, and watched the sky with the same blend of awe and anxiety you feel right now. And just before you leave the hill, you notice something. A small iron trinket placed gently beside the new grave. Your pendant, the spiral, left behind without a word, but full of meaning. You smile, because you finally understand the rhythm of this age. It's not just about iron. It's about what we forge with it. Our tools, our homes, our futures, our memories. And now, it's time to wind down. The fire in the hearth has dwindled to soft coals, pulsing gently like a heartbeat in the quiet dark. Outside, the stars stretch across the sky in a pale shimmer. Constellations older than any burial mound, older than any iron blade. You lie back on the woven mat, warm under a woolen blanket, the faint scent of herbs and smoke clinging to your hair. Your muscles, once tense from the day's travel, now melt into the ground, heavy and still. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird calls. A low, lonely sound, drawn out like a yawn. The kind of sound that pulls the edges of your thoughts toward dreams. You let the stories settle. Let the memories of wild hunts and glowing forges, whispered songs and flickering torches, nestle quietly into place. They're not gone. They're part of you now, braided into your breath, soft by sleep. The Iron Age was never just about iron. It was about transformation of land, of people, of time, and maybe of you, too. So let yourself drift like mist over old stones. Let the past blur into peace. Let your mind stretch into the dark, gently curious, quietly full. You're safe here. The world is quiet. The journey is done. Sleep well.